Chapter 1342 Teaching Good Behavior. 1342 Teaching Good Behavior. The 7 mountain river tiers attacked Linghan furiously, but Linghan caused chaos in the course of attacks of these 7 people merely through simple movements. They were endlessly attacking each other, and in this moment, the atmosphere was quite lively. Jiang Qiaoling couldn't help but be surprised. If one said that Linghan had just been lucky, it could not have been that he would have been lucky so many times, but if one was saying that Linghan was very strong, she was not one to believe that, either. Firstly, there was not the slightest bit of the aura of an elite to feel from Linghan, and secondly, if he was really an elite, why would he have to come here to rely on her father's help? But the truth of the matter was that the red headscarf and his companions were becoming more and more disorderly. Finally, they were punching and striking each other, and the worst victim had even been struck by a saber. Even his stomach had been split open. By now, they finally dared not make another move. Instead, they looked at Linghan with incredible wariness, feeling that this young man was really too unusual. "Done playing around?" Linghan asked with a beaming smile. When Jiang Qiaoling saw this, she immediately loudly exclaimed, "How could we be done playing? Of course we'll continue to play, and we're going to play a big game too." If she could use this chance to completely scare Ling Yefeng off, then she would be able to get more peace. The red headscarf and his companions hurriedly shook their heads, though. They did not want to continue to play. Couldn't it be seen that they were all now battered and bruised by now? Moreover, the one worst off could even see his intestines spilling out of his stomach. "Quick, go get reinforcements." The red headscarf delivered a kick to the person next to him. Yes. The man hurriedly nodded, and ran off like the wind. "If you have the guts, don't run," the red headscarf said. He was afraid that Linghan would run. Then, even if they managed to get reinforcements, they wouldn't be able to do anything to Linghan, either. After all, the faction of Great Ancestor Yang was also very strong. "Of course we're not running, what do we have to fear?" Jiang Qiaoling placed her hands at her hips. "Go and call Ling Yefeng over, and we'll see how my uncle will teach him good behavior." Linghan simply chose to remain silent, allowing Jiang Qiaoling to be his spokesperson. After a while, the reinforcements came. These were 3 people in the consummate level of the mountain river tier, exuding a powerful aura. Senior brother Liu, senior brother Zhao, senior brother Ma. The red headscarf was overjoyed at their unexpected arrival, and hurriedly greeted the 3 newcomers. "It's this brat that actually dared to disrespect young Master Ling." "Oh!" Senior brother Liu took a few steps forward, swept an eye over Linghan, and involuntarily revealed an expression of disdain. He gave a humph, and said, "You can't even deal with this kind of person, and still need the 3 of us to move?" His eyes looked over the bruises and wounds on the red headscarf and his companions, and his expression became even more displeased. Every sect would definitely be divided into several factions. For instance, they all belonged to the Ling faction, whereas Linghan and Jiang Qiaoling were obviously from the Yang faction. Now, the people of the Ling faction had actually been beaten by people from the Yang faction, so they would naturally feel embarrassed. Senior brother Liu, the red headscarf said weakly. He also felt quite aggrieved. It was obvious that Linghan was really not that strong, but just by moving his feet, he had caused them to be in complete chaos. He felt ashamed just by talking about it. Senior brother Liu waved him off, and stopped the red headscarf from saying whatever he was going to say. No matter how it was, since people of the Ling faction had been beaten, he was naturally not just going to sit by and watch. "You, kneel down." He pointed at Linghan, giving out pressure that came from one used to a lofty position. "I'll give you a chance. As long as you kneel for 3 days and nights, I will spare you this once." "Liu Dongdong, why are you acting so proud? Do you think that you are so very awesome?" Jiang Qiaoling could not stop herself from fanning the fires again. "Uncle, you don't have to mind me. Beat them. Beat him until even his own mother wouldn't be able to recognize him." "My name is Liu Dongming." Senior brother Liu called out loudly, a vein popping on his forehead. "Don't you think that Liu Dongdong sounds nicer?" Jiang Qiaoling's whole expression was completely innocent and naive, but whoever believed that she was really so innocent would definitely be fooled dizzy. Damn it! Liu Dongming couldn't help but make a move, and snatched at Jiang Qiaoling. Jiang Qiaoling was very agile. Since she had deliberately fanned the fires, how could she have been unguarded? She stayed beside Ling Han all this while, and the moment Liu Dongming made his move, she immediately ducked behind Ling Han, completely making Ling Han into her human shield. "Out of the way!" Liu Dongming shouted loudly. Ling Han did not answer, but neither did he move out of the way. To Liu Dongming, this was naturally seen as a challenge, and he pressed down his palm towards him. 4 mountain rivers appeared around him and formed a frightening pressure. The release of the mountain rivers would boost destructive power. Ling Han moved 1 step to the side, and then very casually sent out a palm strike of his own. However, whether it was in terms of timing or power, it was controlled strictly. There was obviously not much power, but Liu Dongming involuntarily charged forwards, and with a bang, also fell pathetically onto the ground. The red headscarf almost laughed out loud. "Just now, you had even called me trash, but didn't you end up just like I had?" But they were still on the same side, after all, so he couldn't possibly favor an outsider instead of his own side. Jiang Qiaoling did not have such qualms, and erupted into laughter. She even began applauding, and said, "Uncle, you're great. Now I believe that you are my father's friend because you are as treacherous as my father. Would anyone give their father such an assessment?" Ling Han couldn't help but shake his head. Furthermore, there was absolutely no similarity in personality that he shared with Jiang Yefeng. Liu Dongming got back up, and looked at Ling Han with shock and suspicion. He couldn't understand. Ling Han had obviously not used much power in that strike, and he hadn't moved very fast, either, so why had he involuntarily fallen to the ground from such a light strike? He put himself in Ling Han's shoes, but no matter how hard he thought about it, he did not think that he could do it himself. It was precisely because this confusion that caused him not to dare to make another move. His thinking was correct. No mountain river tier could possibly deliver a heavy strike so lightly like how Ling Han had done so previously. That was because Ling Han had not used brute force. Instead, he had used the power of regulations of a higher level, and that was why he could easily pummel a mountain river tier while not showing any obvious power. "Quick, go get reinforcements," Liu Dongming said to the red headscarf. The red headscarf involuntarily broke out in a cold sweat. Why did these words sound so familiar? Weren't they the exact words he had said to his lackey just now? Now the speaker was another person, but there was no change to his lines. He hurriedly turned around and ran, going off to look for someone even stronger. If even consummate level was not an equal match, then he could only bring a senior of the Sun Moon tier. "How should I address you, sir?" Liu Dongming asked darkly. Ling Han waved his hand dismissively, and said, "You are still not qualified to find out." Liu Dongming almost exploded in fury. He was just a step away from becoming a higher-level elite by reaching the Sun Moon tier, yet had actually been waved off and reprimanded by another so dismissively as if he was just any ordinary person. How could he take that? Wait until the elites of the Ling faction come, and we'll see if you won't be suppressed like a dog. After a while, a middle-aged man walked quickly over, the red headscarf following behind him. There was a red sun above the head of this middle-aged man, his attitude disdainful, seeming extremely arrogant. In the Heaven's Sword Palace, the Sun Moon tier was an undisputed elite, so it was normal for him to be arrogant. This man's surname was Cheng, with the name of Yuan, and he belonged to the faction of the Ling clan. Who is the fuck? At first, Cheng Yuan had been completely relaxed, but when his eyes caught sight of Ling Han, he couldn't help but call out loudly in spite of himself. Why was this bringer of misfortune here? Chapter 1343 The bringer of misfortune is here. 1343 The bringer of misfortune is here. The lower-level disciples of the Heaven's Sword Palace might not know who Ling Han was, but among the higher-ups, he was definitely notorious and known to all. The main culprit that had brought the lower realm into the immortal realm through opening the sky. A freak that had advanced to the Sun Moon tier in a mere 10 years' time, and a great enemy that possessed the ability to threaten the existence of the Five Sect. Now, this powerful enemy had actually come quietly to the Heaven's Sword Palace. Gasp! Cheng Yuan's hair was standing on ends due to his intense anxiety. His aura had also become extremely unstable. Peng, the red headscarf immediately became unlucky. He was instantly sent flying by the force of his aura alone. His face landed on the ground first, and he immediately broke several more teeth, which caused him much depression. What kind of bad luck was he in? Ling Han, Cheng Yuan called out in spite of himself. His voice was extremely shrill, and it was sharp enough that practically no one could tell that this kind of voice had come from a man's mouth. Ling Han? The other disciples were all baffled. Could it be that Uncle Cheng Yuan knew this young man? Hold on, Ling? Could he be a descendant of great ancestor Ling? But then why was he with the people from the Yang clan? Could it be that he was the black sheep of the Ling clan? Cheng Yuan did not say another word. Immediately, he threw up his hand, and a firework immediately bloomed in the skies. This was no ordinary firework, but rather the alert signal unique to the Heaven's Sword Palace. As the fireworks danced, a shock wave swept out in all directions, instantly enshrouding the whole Heaven's Sword City. It even radiated to several thousand miles away, transmitted to the other 4 sects. The expressions of the red headscarf and the others all changed swiftly. Among the alert signals of the Heaven's Sword Palace, there was a total of 5 colors: crimson, red, green, blue, and purple, with the purple warning indicating the lowest level of danger, while crimson would mean that it was a matter that concerned the continuing existence of the sect. The worst they had seen was the green-colored signal, and the red signal had never been used before, what more the crimson one. Cheng Yuan releasing the purple warning signal was obviously because of Ling Han, yet could such an ordinary-looking young man really be such a huge threat that he could threaten the survival of the Heaven's Sword Palace? Shio. It was in that short instant that several dozen figures flew over, and the number was still increasing. The 5 sects were more fortunate. When the troops of the Netherworld retreated, the majority of their members had also returned to their respective sects. All the elites of the Sun-Moon tier dared not leave, keeping their guard at all times against the possibility of Ling Han's arrival. Thus, they had avoided the calamity in this manner. Now that they saw the crimson signal, the elites naturally would immediately arrive. Ling Han. It's that brat. Damn it, he actually really dared to come. Quick, activate the Great Protective Formation, then bring out the ancestral weapon to kill this brat. A whole group of people were making a ruckus, and they were all the mighty figures in the eyes of these disciples. Even if a mountain collapsed in front of them, they would usually not twitch an eyebrow, yet all of them were extremely anxious now, and there was no difference between them and ordinary people. This caused the red headscarf and the others to feel astonished. Who exactly was this person in front of them? Could it be that he was a bringer of misfortune? An old man appeared, and solemnly called out to Jiang Qiaoling, "Qiao, come back." This was the leader of the Yang faction. His name was Yang Jin, and he was also Jiang Qiaoling's maternal great-great-great-grandfather. When he saw his own descendant was standing next to a bringer of misfortune like Ling Han, his heart instantly shuddered. He thought that this girl was really outrageously bold. Jiang Qiaoling was involuntarily shocked. This old friend of her father was a little too awesome, wasn't he? He had actually caused so many elites of the sect to mobilize. Had this ever happened before? At least, as far as she knew, the answer was no. Though she was usually mischievous and very headstrong, with Yang Jin being so strict, she did not dare defy his command. Immediately, she walked over to Yang Jin, but couldn't help from turning her head around to look. No matter how she looked at him, she only thought that Ling Han had delicate features, and did not look anything like a very violent, dangerous character. Not until Jiang Qiaoling had come to his side did Yang Qin breathe a sigh of relief. He thought that though Ling Han was extremely evil, he was still quite straightforward and upright in his ways, at least, and was not in the habit of using a weaker person as a hostage. Ling Han, you are really outrageously bold. You even dare to barge into the Heaven's Sword Palace. Are you not afraid that you will die here? An old man asked menacingly. He was the leader of the Ling faction, Ling Kongcheng. Ling Han smiled calmly, and said, "Go and call Jiang Yefeng over. I have questions to ask him." "Humph, you're here in our sect, and you still want to issue orders?" Yang Jin humphed. At this moment, the Great Protective Formation had already been activated, and the ancestral weapon of the Heaven's Sword Palace had also been brought out. With a flash, it flew out from a certain corner of the city and was aloft in the skies, exuding a frightening might. This great protective formation had been strengthened through who knew how many years, and so had the ancestral weapon. Any one of them would be able to match a cultivator in the middle stage of the sun-moon tier, or even peak stage, and if the two were used together, they also had the ability to strengthen each other and boost the might to a higher level. They could even stand against the peak stage of the sun-moon tier. That also meant that when the Heaven's Sword Palace started a war, it was equivalent to them having an elite of the heavenly body tier, though it was only one in the early stage of low extreme. But how astonishing was it to cross the gap from the sun-moon tier to heavenly body tier? Now that the two deadly weapons were out, those of the Heaven's Sword Palace were finally calm and unhurried. Now, Ling Han only had two options to choose from. He could either fight or flee, but whether he chose to fight or flee, the result would not change. He was destined to die in this place. He had really delivered himself right into a trap. Ling Han smiled slightly, and said, "I have seen one of you years ago when I was still in the lower realm, and now, 20 years later, I can finally see the true faces of you animals. I am truly feeling rueful at this moment." "How dare you?" another old man rebuked. 4 suns and moons appeared behind him, exuding a slight aura, and causing the air around him to immediately begin burning. The others all looked furious as well. He had come to the Heaven's Sword Palace, and he still dared to insult them as animals. He was really being too arrogant. Could it be that he didn't know that he was currently trapped in an ultimate killing formation, and there was also an ancestral weapon above him that was aimed right at him? Meanwhile, Jiang Qiaoling bore an expression of admiration. Whether Ling Han was friend or enemy, he deserved to be admired just for his air of majesty. However, why was this man also named Ling Han? It had to be known that her father's master was called this name as well. Ling Han had also said that he was an old friend of her father, so it was definitely impossible that he shared the same name as the founder. Could it be? A theory came up in her mind, but she quickly shook her head. That was too much of an exaggeration. How could this brat possibly be her father's master? If that was really the case, if the fact that she had called him uncle all this while came to be known to her old man, he would definitely beat her pert bottom black and blue. Wasn't that deceiving his master and eliminating her ancestor? Activate the killing formation to kill this brat. Yang Jin commanded darkly. "All right, I will take charge of the ancestral weapon," Ling Kongcheng said. Though he and Yang Jin had competed with each other over the majority of their lives, in front of a shared enemy, they were standing on the same side. Internal strife was internal strife, and they were fighting over power within the sect, but if they could not unite against an outsider and the Heaven's Sword Palace was finished, what chance would they have for internal strife? 8 Spiritual Divine Ghost. Yang Jin tapped his own forehead, and Wang, the formation that enshrouded the whole Heaven's Sword City, was immediately activated. A colossal black-colored human-shaped monster appeared. It was about 300 meters tall, its hand wielding a short staff. The moment it appeared, it was exuding an extremely fearful and evil aura, and even the heaven and earth paled in color. What an evil entity! Chapter 1344, Stepping Forward Bravely to Protect Master. Chapter 1344, Stepping Forward Bravely to Protect Master. The formation moved, forming an evil spirit as tall as 300 meters, its malicious aura soaring sky-high. Destiny Sword. Ling Kongcheng meanwhile drove the ancestral weapon to slash down at Ling Han. Sure, in the skies, the ancestral weapon shone and became 30,000 meters long. It slashed down with a sword light, extremely brilliant and blinding. All the members of the Heaven's Sword Palace were smirking coldly. The ancestral weapon and the great protective formation showed their might at the same time, boosting each other's power. That might would be able to match the peak stage of the sun-moon tier, which could practically be considered another type of the heavenly body tier, which would be enough to crush any sun-moon tier. This brat might be freakish, but he was too arrogant. He actually dared charge boldly into their ancestral grounds. Wasn't that practically courting his own death? Sword Light and the evil spirit attacked at the same time, exuding a frightening aura. Ling Han's feet moved, and he easily dodged all the attacks. He had even drawn the attacks towards where the people of the Heaven's Sword sect were, causing both Ling Kongcheng and Yang Jin to break out in a cold sweat. They were the controllers of the ancestral weapon and formation, and it would naturally take a lot of their concentration and effort to control these two objects that had such powerful and frightening might. Boom! 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 One attack landed after another, and a massive commotion rang out in the city, causing those mortals who did not know the truth to be greatly puzzled. What was going on with the Heaven's Sword Palace? In their memories, the Heaven's Sword City had never experienced being invaded by an outside force. However, there were also more and more elites of the Heaven's Sword Palace gathering. As long as they had reached the Sun-Moon tier, they all raced over here. Mountain River tiers could only watch the battle from afar, whereas those below Immortal level had temporarily left the Heaven's Sword Palace to avoid being impacted by the shockwaves from the battle. That would lead to definite death. A beautiful woman appeared, and called out anxiously to Jiang Qiaoling, "Qiao." Beside her was a handsome man. He had a little badness in his handsomeness, yet one would still be enchanted by his charisma. Jiang Yefeng. Ling Han recognized him with a single glance. This flashy disciple of his was still as dashingly handsome as he had been. That kind of charm that had a little bit of badness in it was something that would most easily attract women. Read more chapter on novel full. Father, mother. Jiang Qiaoling hurriedly raced over, and threw herself into the beautiful woman's arms. The latter was a noble daughter of the Heaven's Sword Palace, and her name was Chen Di. Chen Di quickly embraced her daughter with deep concern as she asked, "Qiao, are you injured?" When she knew that her daughter was together with a bringer of misfortune like Ling Han, she almost fainted in her anxiety. Meanwhile, Jiang Yefeng frowned. He was looking at Ling Han, his eyes confused. This man was actually called Ling Han as well, and had come from the lower realm, causing a very huge wave to rise up in his heart. "Father, this uncle says he's your old friend, and he knows the cold wind palm." Jiang Qiaoling spoke fast, and blurted out everything in a single instant. "What?" Jiang Yefeng was instantly stirred up. Only his master and fellow disciples knew the cold wind palm, and this man was also named Ling Han and had come from the lower realm. These three important facts added together caused him to come up with a very bold deduction. He took a few steps forwards, and loudly asked, "Sir, who was the one who taught you the cold wind palm?" Ling Han laughed loudly, and said, "I learnt it on my own, but as for yours, I was the one who taught you." Jiang Yefeng received a shock, yet he shook his head repeatedly, and said, "Impossible. Impossible. My master has passed away, don't think that you can impersonate him. Is that right?" Ling Han smiled, and casually spoke of some events that had happened when he had taken Jiang Yefeng as disciple. Though those were all unremarkable small matters, they were also only known to only Ling Han and Jiang Yefeng. Not even his other three disciples knew of them. Master. Jiang Yefeng instantly knelt down, tears streaming down his cheeks. Meanwhile, Jiang Qiaoling had paled. She had indeed not guessed wrongly this was really that Ling Han, and she actually used her father's master like a shield, and had called him an uncle all this while. If her father found out, he would definitely beat her bottom black and blue. Chen Jin and Ling Kongcheng were both stunned. They naturally knew some information about Jiang Yefeng. He was a prodigious disciple, after all. However, Jiang Yefeng had been brought to the Immortal Realm 10,000 years ago, and Ling Han had come through opening the sky only 20 years ago. How could the timing match? Time source fluid. They immediately had this thought in their hearts. This was a divine item that could seal off vitality and allow one to pass thousands of years. Unfortunately, it was only effective for those below Immortal level. However, if that was not the case, they would not be qualified to obtain this object even with their abilities. So he is a remaining evil element. Chen Jin smirked coldly. "We did not find you and kill you 10,000 years ago, leaving a great danger for us at present. Kill." Ling Kongcheng's eyes were cold as well. More and more elites were arriving and collectively controlling the ancestral weapon and formation. Not only did this take off a lot of pressure from the two of them, it also increased the might of the ancestral weapon and formation greatly. "Evil spirit servile sword." Ling Kongcheng roared loudly. That evil spirit actually gripped the divine sword from the skies, and ruthlessly slashed down on Ling Han. This was the perfect merging of the ancestral weapon and the great protective formation, which could boost their might to the true apex. It was so close to the apex that it was equivalent to the early stage of the low extreme of the heavenly body tier. Stop. Jiang Yefeng stepped out bravely, not caring for how weak he was, and stood in front of Ling Han. He stretched out his arms, exhibiting the courage that said, "If you want to kill my master, you have to kill me first." Yefeng. Chen Di hurriedly stepped out as well, also regardless of the danger she would face. Father, mother. Jiang Qiaoling did not hesitate as well, and jumped out too. Damn it! Chen Jin roared in fury, and hurriedly pointed a finger at that evil spirit. The might of the sword slash delivered by the evil spirit was immediately forced to one side, missing Ling Han, and landed on the ground 9 meters beside him, giving rise to dust and sand that filled the air. A crack appeared in the ground, spreading out in all directions like a spider's web. This was equivalent to the attack of a heavenly body tier. Its destructive ability was too powerful. Even if there was a great protective formation here, it was useless. Chen Di, Chaoer, come back quickly. Chen Di called out harshly. Though Jiang Yefeng was also his great-great-great-grandson-in-law, since he was not of their lineage, he could be punished and killed. He was already filled with the intent to kill him. No. Chen Di shook her head, and begged, "Ancestor, please don't hurt Yefeng. Don't harm my parents." Jiang Qiaoling also stretched out her arms, acting aggressive and overbearing. "Chaoer, Chen Di, the two of you go back." Jiang Yefeng commanded seriously. He could not possibly stand by and watch as his master was ganged up on and killed, but he similarly was unwilling to see his wife and daughter implicated in this matter as well. Yefeng. Chen Di wept, only shaking her head continuously. Jiang Yefeng felt like his heart was being cut apart, yet his expression was cold. He had no regrets, even if he would die. Without Ling Han, he would have long since died. Yet Ling Han smiled, and said, "Yefeng, you have gotten yourself a good spouse." Jiang Yefeng smiled bitterly. Things had already reached this point, yet his master was still so composed. This ability to keep himself calm was something he admired, but it did not change the present situation in the slightest. "Old Chen, sorry." Ling Kongcheng humphed, and began to control the evil spirit again to slash out at Ling Han. Not only would this strike hit Ling Han, even Jiang Yefeng and the others would not be able to escape. In the face of the survival of the sect, what was kinship worth? Chen Jin sighed, but closed his eyes. Boom, the divine sword descended. Chen Jin was previously named Yang Jin, but for some reason, the author has switched his surname to Chen. Chapter 1345, This Impressive? Chapter 1345, This Impressive? The divine sword slashed down. This was a heavenly body tier attack, so it was incredibly powerful and frightening. Ling Han casually waved his hand. There was clearly no energy fluctuation, yet the might of the sword slash gradually became weaker and weaker. In the end, it became as light and weak as a gentle breeze. The tide of the ages. This wasn't the damaged bloodline technique that had been retrieved from Ding Zizhen, but rather the true and complete celestial technique that had been retrieved from Ding Ling's memory. Ling Han had spent over 2,000 years to advance to the heavenly body tier, and he had also used this time to fully grasp the tide of the ages. When he waved his hand, he clearly hadn't created any energy fluctuations. However, he had still managed to instantly age the sword slash and completely diminish its power. Meanwhile, Jiang Yefeng naturally wouldn't accept death without any resistance. He was already prepared for this, and he instantly threw a punch at the sword. Peng! The divine sword was instantly sent flying hundreds of meters into the sky. At the same time, the evil spirit was also sent stumbling back, almost collapsing to the ground. What? What in the world is going on? The members of the Heaven's Sword Palace were all stunned, and Jiang Yefeng himself was also confused. He scratched his head in confusion. Since when had he become so strong? Yefeng. Chen Di cried tears of happiness as she hugged her husband from behind. She had initially thought that this slash would take her lover away from her forever. However, her husband had unexpectedly unleashed a devastating might and battered the divine sword away. This caused joy and delight to flash across her eyes. Dad, you're so powerful. Jiang Qiaoling also yelped in astonishment. Who didn't understand the powerful nature of this sect protection formation and divine sword? This being the case, was Jiang Yefeng a heavenly body tier elite? There was respect and fear in everyone's eyes as they looked at Jiang Yefeng. To the Heaven's Sword Palace, heavenly body tier elites were no different from Genesis tier saints. Cultivators at these tiers were all immensely powerful and invincible beings. Read more chapter on novel full. However, Chen Jin and the others didn't believe this. Jiang Yefeng's aura was clearly still at the Sun-Moon tier. Moreover, it was only at the low extreme of the Sun-Moon tier. If they were unable to determine even this, then they could all buy a block of tofu and smack themselves to death. So, how was the evil spirit's attack blocked? Was it Ling Han? This couldn't be. Although he had indeed waved his hand, there hadn't been any origin power fluctuation at all. So, how could he have possibly dissolved the heavenly body tier attack? Not to mention that Ling Han was only at the Sun-Moon tier. Even if he were at the heavenly body tier, such a feat would have still been impossible. Regardless of how powerful one was, they would still need to release their power if they were to block a strike. Of course, this conclusion was simply the result of their ignorance and lack of knowledge. Regulations were also a part of battle prowess. Moreover, as long as the regulations that one grasped were powerful enough, one could easily unleash a devastating might without needing to use any other power. Again, Ling Kongcheng roared. A dozen or so people instantly started to manipulate the formation and the god tool again. The evil spirit steadied itself and launched another sword strike at Jiang Yefeng. Boom! A heavenly body tier pressure radiated from the sword, and it was as if even heaven and earth were about to shatter and collapse. Jiang Yefeng gritted his teeth and replied with another punch. This was an act of desperation as there was simply nothing else he could do. Ling Han chuckled in his mind. He casually waved his hand and unleashed the tide of the ages again. The evil spirit's sword slash arrived before Jiang Yefeng, yet it was as gentle and soft as a spring breeze. Peng! Jiang Yefeng's fist collided with the divine sword, and it was like a raging dragon out of the sea as it pummeled the sword back once again. His power continued to travel through the divine sword and into the evil spirit's body, lifting it up and throwing it back through the air. The evil spirit collapsed the ground with a heavy thud. Gasp! Everyone was stunned by this exchange. Once could be a coincidence, but twice. There couldn't be so many coincidences in the world. If there were, then it wouldn't be a coincidence anymore. It would be an expected occurrence. Jiang Yefeng. He could battle against heavenly body tier elites. This was incredible. One had to realize that he was only at the low extreme of the Sun-Moon tier. Yet he was actually able to battle against this evil spirit that was at the low extreme of the heavenly body tier. Not only this, but he was even able to enjoy a huge advantage. Just how impressive was this? Prodigy. No, a supreme prodigy. Not adding the 2 extra supremes in front would be failing to do justice to his tremendous prodigiousness. 5-star geniuses. Could they compare to Jiang Yefeng? His battle prowess had surpassed an entire major tier. It was a whopping 16 stars. Even Jiang Yefeng started to question his own power. Had he woken up on the wrong side of bed and taken the wrong medication? How was he so powerful? Yefeng. Although this person is your master, the relationship between you two merely spanned several hundred years. However, the sect has treated you generously and nurtured you for over 10,000 years. Moreover, you've already married a disciple of our Heaven's Sword sect. Is this not reason enough for you to support us? Ling Kongcheng immediately asked. In the beginning, they had merely viewed Jiang Yefeng as a traitor. Now, however, this traitor had displayed heaven-defying power. Thus, they naturally had to change their attitude. This kind of freakish prodigy was far too important to the Heaven's Sword sect. Not only could he push the Heaven's Sword sect to the leader's position of the 5 sects, but he could even help them conquer more territory. However, regardless of how gaudy and self-confident Jiang Yefeng was, he was still extremely clear about his own strength. Battling against this evil spirit definitely wasn't something that he could do. Thus, he turned to look at Ling Han, asking, "Master, what do you say?" The 5 sects have continued to refine realm pills for so long, and this is a crime that can't be forgiven. They must be eliminated from existence. Otherwise, how can the generation upon generation of victims rest in peace? Ling Han said calmly. This disciple understands, Jiang Yefeng replied respectfully. Detestable. Ling Kongcheng glared at Ling Han, and said, Mister, your surname is also Ling, so perhaps we share a common ancestor. That being the case, is there any need to take things so far? Holy fuck. Don't you feel shameless uttering such words? Ling Han couldn't help but say, Old geezer, you've really shown me the next level of shamelessness. Fine, I'm not a bloodthirsty person, either, so why don't you disband the Heaven's Sword Palace from today onward? Those above the immortal level can all cripple their own cultivation. As for those who decided to refine the realm pills, they must die. Ling Kongqing's expression instantly became dark. Ling Han was simply taking things too far. After all, he was also a member of the higher-ups who had decided to refine the realm pills in the first place. Now, Ling Han wanted him to die, and he also wanted him to disband the Heaven's Sword Palace. Moreover, he even wanted those above the immortal level to cripple their own cultivation. You're fucking dreaming. If that's your decision, then the only option is to battle to the death. He abandoned all thoughts of resolving this peacefully. It was clear that Ling Han wasn't planning to spare them anyway. Go, he roared loudly, and the evil spirit swung the divine sword wildly as it lunged forward again. He refused to believe that Jiang Yefeng was truly so powerful. After confirming that Jiang Yefeng hadn't been dragged into the muddy waters by the Heaven's Sword Palace in these past 10,000 years, Ling Han naturally didn't need to hold back any longer. He strode forward and threw a punch at the evil spirit. This was an extremely simple punch. Peng. However, this punch was extremely domineering, and the power of the punch transformed into a ray of light that crashed into the evil spirit's chest. The devastating force of this strike instantly blasted the evil spirit into pieces. Meanwhile, the divine sword also spun in the air before being caught by Ling Han. It returned to its original size of 3 feet long. A violent glow immediately burst from the divine sword as it attempted to break free from Ling Han's grasp. Sword chi surged into the surroundings, unleashing an astonishing destructive power. Humph. Ling Han humphed softly, and said, trying to resist. His physique was far too terrifying. In fact, it was even a tad more powerful than level 10 godly metal. Meanwhile, this divine sword was only forged from level 8 godly metal, so how could it break free from his grasp? The sword shuddered violently and rang in grief as it was forcefully suppressed by Ling Han. Ling Han was ticked off by the divine sword, so he simply resorted to violent brute strength. Pa! The divine sword was forcefully snapped into 2. Holy fucking shit! Everyone gasped in shock upon seeing this. In fact, their eyes were almost about to pop out of their heads. Ling Han. He had snapped a god tool into 2 with his bare hands. Just what kind of freak was he? At this moment, everyone finally came to a realization. Sure enough, it wasn't Jiang Yefeng who was freakishly powerful. He was indeed just an ordinary cultivator at the low extreme of the Sun-Moon tier. The abnormal person was this powerful freak. Chapter 1346, Destroying the Heaven's Sword Palace. Chapter 1346, Destroying the Heaven's Sword Palace. Bitterness and terror instantly gripped at the hearts of the elites of the Heaven's Sword Palace. Their 2 most powerful defenses had been destroyed by Ling Han. The sect-protecting formation had been shattered by his punch, and the ancestral weapon had been brutally snapped into 2. How could they continue to fight him? They could only wait for death to arrive. Jiang Qiaoling's eyes instantly lit up. This uncle. No, this grandmaster was far too powerful. With his influence and protection, wouldn't she be able to do as she pleased in the future? This is your final chance. The main culprits must die, and the others might have a chance at survival, Ling Han said calmly. A heavenly body tier aura instantly radiated from his body. This was the suppression from a superior being. To say nothing of ordinary Sun-Moon tier cultivators, even those at the pinnacle level of the Sun-Moon tier would be easily suppressed by him. After all, Ling Han was a 6-star genius at this moment. Ling Kongcheng glanced at Chen Jin, and as their eyes met, it was as if they had come to some instant understanding. Xiu. Ling Kongcheng suddenly lunged forward, killing intent surging from his body. However, his target wasn't Ling Han. Instead, it was Chen Jin. This was far too sudden. Who could have predicted this? The old man placed a hand on Chen Jin's head, and coldly said, Chen Di, if you want your ancestor to live, then immediately tell him to stop. This. Jiang Yefeng and Chen Di were both transfixed with shock and disbelief. This old geezer continued to lower the bar for his shamelessness. Di, save me. Chen Jin was extremely cooperative, and tears streamed down his face as he looked at Chen Di with a pitiful expression. This was an absolute joke. Read more chapter on novel full. Ling Han's expression was cold, and he said, enough. There's no need to continue this despicable act. Both of you are prime culprits, so there's already no way for you to escape death. Why can't you two die with some dignity? What's the worth of dignity? Is it edible? Ling Kongcheng stared at Ling Han, and shouted, Ling Han, this is the ancestor of your disciple's wife. Yet, you're just going to stand there and watch him die. Don't you feel any guilt or shame toward your disciple? Guilt your mom. Ling Han was truly irked at this moment, and he immediately extended his arm toward them. A deep frown appeared on Ling Kongcheng's face. His threat still wasn't working. By the looks of it, he wasn't doing enough. He suddenly pressed down with his hand. Pa. Chen Jin's head instantly exploded. At the same time, a human-shaped light orb flew out from his crushed head. This was Chen Jin's divine sense. There was fury and astonishment on his face, and it was clear that he hadn't expected Ling Kongcheng to truly kill him. However, before he could even open his mouth to berate Ling Kongcheng, his divine sense had already been grabbed by him. Without a body, how could a mere divine sense be capable of defending itself against an elite at the same cultivation level? Don't force me to do this. Ling Kongcheng shouted menacingly. Dumsi *NT. Ling Han was merciless as he lashed out with his palm. Pa. Ling Kongcheng's body was instantly obliterated. He had no chance to carry through with his threat. His divine sense also flew out. After reaching the immortal level, one's divine sense would still be able to survive for a certain amount of time even without the support of a physical body. This would give one enough time to possess another body. Right now, Ling Kongcheng was also reduced to just his divine sense. However, he didn't charge over to battle against Chen Jin. Instead, the two of them suddenly started to flee in opposite directions. Without the support of a physical body, one's divine sense would become extremely fragile and weak. At the same time, however, the lack of a physical body would also give one's divine sense more agility and freedom. Not only were divine senses extremely quick, but they even possessed the ability to fly. They were going to flee, and if they possessed the bodies of even just ordinary people, they would be able to survive for several decades more. Whenever those bodies started to fail, they would simply leave and possess the bodies of some other people. You think you can escape? Ling Han snapped his fingers. Shoo, shoo. Two arcs of lightning surged outward at an incredible speed. This was the power of heavenly tribulation that he had grasped. Just how quick was the divine lightning of the tribulation? Could anyone in the world outrun it? No. Ling Kongcheng and Chen Jin naturally weren't exempt from this absolute rule, and it wasn't long before they were caught by the two arcs of lightning. There were two loud cracks as they were instantly fried into dust. Every single molecule of their being was blasted from existence. Ling Han strode around, his heavenly body tier aura enveloping the sect and causing all the members of the Heaven's Sword Palace to kneel down. No one dared to stand up against him. I'll give you people half a day's time. The prime culprits can kill themselves, and everyone in the immortal level can cripple their own cultivation. From today onward, the Heaven's Sword Palace will cease to exist. If anyone fails to do this, I'll personally hunt them down and kill them. Compared to how the five sects had refined the beings of an entire small world into realm pills, Ling Han's actions were actually incredibly benevolent. This was because he didn't enjoy bloodshed. Let's go, Ling Han said to Jiang Yefeng. Yes, Master, Jiang Yefeng hurriedly replied. Ling Han walked out of the sect, and Jiang Yefeng obediently followed behind him. Meanwhile, Chen Di and Jiang Qiaoling were even further back as they followed behind Jiang Yefeng. They found some place in the city to sit down, where master and disciple started to exchange their stories. However, Jiang Yefeng's story was extremely simple. Although he had lived in the immortal realm for over 10,000 years, he had barely ever left his residence. The most significant thing he had done after Ling Han's disappearance was founding the Cold Spear Association in the lower realm. Traveling from the immortal realm to small worlds was extremely difficult, yet transmitting some non-living entities over was relatively simple. Thus, he was able to transmit his divine intent and found an association even through the barrier of the two realms. Half a day passed, and Ling Han returned to the Heaven's Sword Palace. Most of the prime culprits were already dead. This was mainly because they had descendants, and they didn't dare to test Ling Han's patience. However, there were also those who wanted to test their luck. Some fled by themselves, while others fled with their families and descendants. This time, Ling Han didn't hold back anymore. He was ruthless as he killed all of those who dared to disobey his command. Blood flowed, and a sanguinary smell permeated through the entire city. Only a single day had passed, yet the Heaven's Sword Palacia force once dominant in this region had already been wiped from the face of the world and swept into the long annals of history. However, Ling Han didn't continue to the 4 remaining sects. Instead, he went to find Yun Yongwang, Feng Po Yun, and the others first. More people from the lower realm needed to witness the destruction of the 5 sects. Coincidentally, Chen Ruijing had also returned not long ago. Upon seeing Ling Han, he fell to his knees even though he was still very far away. He was overcome by emotion. Meanwhile, the old ginseng and rabbit had also arrived at this place. When they saw Ling Han, they both laughed and joked, saying that he didn't have the appearance of someone who would die young and that they'd known he would be able to make it through alive. However, Jiang Yefeng was received much more coldly. In the eyes of Chen Ruijing and the others, Jiang Yefeng was nothing but a traitor. He had actually joined the Heaven's Sword Palace. However, with mediation from Ling Han, as well as Jiang Qiaoling's cheekiness and persistence to call them uncle, the misunderstandings between them were finally cleared. After all, they had been brothers for many centuries, so how could the misunderstandings and hostility between them not be cleared? Following this, they visited the 4 remaining sects. The Cloud Phoenix sect, Blue Thunder sect, and Absolute Saber sect were all razed to the ground. The prime culprits were killed, and the accessories to the crime were all forced to cripple their own cultivation. They wouldn't be able to commit any more crimes. Lastly, they visited the Earth Dragon sect. The group of them charged to the foot of the mountain that the sect was built on. Because they had already dealt with the Cloud Phoenix sect, the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden also came out from the Black Tower. Upon seeing her, Jiang Yefeng and Ling Han's 3 other disciples all called her Missis in unison. There was a hint of obsequiousness in their voices, and the respect that they showed her was dozens of times what they showed Ling Han. Ding Ping didn't know about their experiences, so he couldn't help but feel confused. Why were his 4 senior brothers so respectful to their master's wife? However, he did know that his master had several other wives who had been taken to the celestial realm. Thus, he quietly prayed for his master, wishing that master's family could live happily and in harmony. Anyhow, the Earth Dragon sect was built amid the marshlands. Most of the disciples of this sect possessed the bloodline of Earth Dragons. Of course, there were also pure-blooded humans. However, because these people weren't suited to practicing the cultivation techniques of the Earth Dragon sect, it was incredibly difficult for them to become elites. Right now, the main gate of the Earth Dragon sect was tightly shut. It was as if the Earth Dragon sect were trying to send the message that Ling Han and the others were unwelcome. Peng! The old ginseng kicked the gate open, and shouted, "Beautiful women of the Earth Dragon sect, hand your undergarment over. Grandpa Ginseng is someone who cherishes and shows compassion to beauties." Chapter 1347, The Earth Dragon Sect S Reinforcements. Chapter 1347, The Earth Dragon Sect S Reinforcements. The Earth Dragon sect was clearly prepared for this, and what greeted Ling Han and the others behind the main gate was a dense mob of people. An elder stepped forward, and roared, "Ling Han, you've taken things too far." A black mist rose from his body, forming into numerous earth dragon-shaped tendrils. These tendrils were packed together extremely closely, and the sight of them was simply repulsive. "What, so you people refining realm pills wasn't taking things too far?" Feng Po Yun asked with a humph. Even his hair was standing on ends, revealing his fury at this moment. The speed of his cultivation was relatively quick. However, due to the constraints of time, he had only just reached the pinnacle level of the mountain river tier, even with the alchemical pills provided by Ling Han. The elder completely ignored Feng Po Yun's comments. Not to mention that he hadn't reached the sun-moon tier yet. As long as he was under the consummate level of the sun-moon tier, the elder wouldn't be afraid of him at all. After all, they were on completely different levels. "Humph. Do you have the right to speak before me?" the elder asked in contempt. Ling Han also humphed, and asked, "Well, do you have the right to act senior and haughty before me?" Boom. He unleashed his aura at the elder who had spoken. Pa. The elder's body instantly went limp, and he couldn't help but fall to his knees. However, he was a stubborn individual, and he forcefully twisted his body so that he would end up falling into a sitting position. Although this was still embarrassing, it was already many times better than kneeling before his enemies. "You're really Ling Han?" a young man in the dense mob of people asked. His face was filled with astonishment. "Oh, it's Brother Nalan." Ling Han nodded slightly as he glanced at the young man. This young man was none other than Nalan II, the king tier who had enjoyed an equal standing with him 10,000 years ago. However, he was evidently less talented than the heavenly phoenix divine maiden, the sword emperor, and the others. In fact, he was even less talented than Jiang Yefeng, Chen Ruijing, and the others. Right now, he still hadn't advanced to the sun-moon tier yet. He was only at the consummate level of the mountain river tier. Read more chapter on Novelful. After such a long time, the gulf in talent between the prodigies had finally become evident. Nalan too smiled bitterly, and said, "Who would have thought that you would become so powerful? Back in the day, I could suppress you with a single strike." Ling Han's expression darkened. "A real man doesn't boast about his past achievements, okay? Also, can you not reopen old wounds? So what if I was weak back then? I had another identity, okay? I was the Alchemy Emperor. Which of you hadn't come over to beg me to refine pills?" Another elder stepped forward and coldly said, "Ling Han, I suggest you go back to wherever you came from. The Earth Dragon sect isn't a place for you to act wantonly." Ling Han was slightly astonished. The Earth Dragon sect would have definitely received news of the other four sects being forcefully disbanded, so how were these people still so calm and confident? It was as if they had a strong grip on the situation. Where was their confidence coming from? "Oh, you people have someone to lean on?" he asked with a smile. "Wait patiently, you'll find out soon," the second elder said. Ling Han ignored him, and continued, "As with the four other sects, I'll give you people a chance. The prime culprits who made the decision to refine the realm pills must die. Those above the immortal level can all cripple their own cultivation. From today onward, disband the Earth Dragon sect. If you do so, I can spare the lives of the others. I'll give you half a day's time." After saying this, Ling Han and the others sat down in front of the main gate of the Earth Dragon sect. They then retrieved some ingredients from the Black Tower and started to enjoy a hearty barbecue. Meanwhile, the old ginseng dashed into the Earth Dragon sect, saying, "Grandpa Ginseng is missing a few maids to massage his legs for him. Your opportunity has come. If you inhale a few breaths next to Grandpa Ginseng, I guarantee you'll feel 100 times more invigorated, and I guarantee your cultivation will advance at a rapid speed. If you manage to satisfy Grandpa Ginseng, I might even shoot you a load of my essence. You'll love it to death." His debauched utterances drew angry glares from the female disciples of the sect. They all felt that this old ginseng was shameless and degenerate. Time slowly trickled by. Meanwhile, even though Ling Han was enjoying a barbecue with the others, he still released his divine sense to observe the entire Earth Dragon sect. However, he didn't detect any heavenly body tier being. Could the Earth Dragon sect have enlisted the help of an Eternal River tier elite? Ling Han refused to believe this. After 4 hours or so, Ling Han suddenly discovered a warship sailing toward them. This warship was extremely large, yet it was also extremely quick. He activated the Eye of Truth as he gazed into the distant sky. What he saw was a gigantic warship around 30 kilometers long appearing over the horizon. It was like a large cloud, and it only took an instant for it to grow from the size of a dot to the size of a fist. This was a clear sign of just how quick it was. Such a large warship could already be treated as a starship. However, this was clearly a warship. There was a flag on its bow, and this flag was decorated with a roaring tiger as well as a large jow. The flag fluttered in the wind, exuding an indescribable might and intimidation. This overwhelming pressure was because of the large jow on the flag. This was definitely written by a supreme elite, and it was definitely imbued with their martial intent. The pressure that radiated from it was powerful enough to crush the bones of a heavenly body tier elite. Ling Han was astonished. Had the Earth Dragon sect really managed to enlist the help of an Eternal River tier elite? However, what could they offer to lure an Eternal River tier elite and earn their help? It wasn't long before the gigantic warship arrived close enough for everyone to see. Joy and delight instantly lit the faces of the members of the Earth Dragon sect. Meanwhile, the expressions of Feng Po Yun and the others became much more stern. Right now, the Earth Dragon sect should have already known that Ling Han had advanced to the heavenly body tier. Thus, the helper that they had enlisted was definitely at or above the heavenly body tier as well. The warship stopped, and a carriage immediately flew down. This carriage was pulled by 2 white horses which had wings and a single horn on their head. These horses appeared extremely mighty, and both measured at least 30 meters in height. Ethereal dragon horses, someone exclaimed in surprise. They had recognized the breed of these 2 majestic horses. Ethereal dragon horses were incredibly rare demonic beasts. After reaching adulthood, they could even advance to the heavenly body tier. Gasp! This person was using ethereal dragon horses to draw their carriage. This was insane. Ling Han raised his eyebrows slightly, yet he wasn't shocked. After all, he had already seen a half-intelligent mount that was forged from saintly material before, and that person's chariot had also been forged from saintly material. Compared to that, what were mere heavenly body tier ethereal dragon horses worth? The carriage quickly descended from the sky. This carriage was also extravagant, with all kinds of level 10 materials draping over its exterior. There were 10,000-year-old purple pearls, 1,000 shadow spiderwebs, lac beast horns, and other luxurious items. The disciples of the Earth Dragon sect had never seen such extravagance and might before. They couldn't help but feel overjoyed. Enlisting the help of this person was definitely the right move. The carriage stopped, and the 2 ethereal dragon horses dragged their hooves over the ground. They wore expressions of condescending haughtiness. Ling Han involuntarily rubbed his hands together. There was quite a large amount of rare godly metal hanging from the carriage, just what he needed to feed his divine demon sword. He was definitely going to plunder all that godly metal. Creak! The carriage door opened, and a beautiful woman stepped out. Then another, and another, and another. They walked out one after another, and in the end, a total of 12 beautiful women had walked out. They then kneeled down and used their bodies to form a staircase. Only then did a man walk out from the carriage. He stepped on the backs of the beautiful women as he walked down to the ground. Motherfucker! The old ginseng was instantly triggered, and he shouted, even Grandpa Ginseng doesn't have so many beautiful women to attend to him. This brat is far too arrogant. Little Han, help Grandpa Ginseng pummel him. Chapter 1348, Jiao Ku. Chapter 1348, Jiao Ku. This man was extremely young, looking no more than 25 years old. However, taking into account the incredibly long lifespan of immortals, one's appearance definitely wasn't an accurate reflection of their age. This person was actually at the heavenly body tier. However, he was only at the early stage of the medium extreme. Moreover, he was definitely over 1 million years old as well. However, considering the long lifespan of heavenly body tier elites, he was clearly still in the prime of his life. He had reached the heavenly body tier at around 1 million years old, and this was certainly a feat to be proud of. Thus, it was no wonder that he had his nose in the air. Our respects to young Master Ku. The members of the Earth Dragon sect all kneeled down in greeting. To say nothing of this young man's background, just his cultivation level alone was enough to subdue the members of the Earth Dragon sect. "Rise," the young man said with a wave of his hand. He appeared extremely casual and relaxed. He swept his gaze around, and upon seeing that Ling Han and the others were still sitting around and eating, his expression instantly changed. He turned to face them, saying, "You people, why didn't you kneel upon seeing me? You dare to make Grandpa Ginseng kneel? Have you eaten too much **tea? The old Ginseng jumped up and down in anger. He had already been jealous that this young man had so many beautiful women surrounding him. Now, this young man was even acting so haughty and arrogant. How could he not be infuriated? The young man had only been slightly irritated before. However, after hearing the old Ginseng's words, his expression instantly became even colder. 12 beauties, what are you waiting for? Capture that ginseng for me. I'll make sure to pleasure you well tonight." "Understood, young master." The 12 beauties smiled as they curtsied, an alluring blush on their faces and a charming look in their eyes. The old Ginseng couldn't help but stare. "Beauties, why don't you come with Grandpa Ginseng instead? My essence is definitely extremely nutritious. It'll be better to make you into ginseng soup." The 12 beauties attacked in unison. Surprisingly, they were all at the consummate level of the Sun-Moon tier. Moreover, they were all extremely skilled at a combination attack formation. Not only could this formation unleash their combined power at once, but it could even buff their power by a significant amount. Thus, the power of their strike was almost at the heavenly body tier. That being the case, how would the old Ginseng dare to face it? He gave a weird shriek before turning around to flee. His cultivation wasn't high, yet his speed was unbelievably quick. He arrived behind Ling Han in the blink of an eye. He then poked his head out, saying, "Ladies, come get me if you dare." He then turned to Ling Han, and said, "Little Han, suppress those little vixens for me. Grandpa Ginseng will provide them with guidance every night and make sure that they give up evil and return to good." The 12 beauties were furious. How was the mouth of this ginseng so toxic? "It's better that we cook you into soup." They were naturally unafraid of Ling Han. After all, they were even capable of battling against heavenly body tier elites when they teamed up. Ling Han raised a hand. Wang. His aura rippled through the air as it surged toward the 12 beauties. Pa, 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 pa. The 12 beauties instantly collapsed to the ground. This was heaven's might, and those who were stronger than Ling Han would have their battle prowess detrimentally affected. As for those who were weaker than him, they wouldn't even have the opportunity to battle against him. All they could do was lie on the ground and wait for death. The young man glared at Ling Han, and said, "Impudence. You even dared to attack my maids. Are you seeking death?" His name was Zhao Ku, and his background was astonishing. He was the only child of an Eternal River tier elite of the Great Crimson Sun Imperial Empire. Thus, he was extremely flamboyant wherever he went. He was already accustomed to a life of luxury. Ling Han waved his hand, and said, "This matter has got nothing to do with you. I suggest you go back wherever you came from." Ha ha. Zhao Ku couldn't help but laugh in anger. What the hell? They were still in the Great Crimson Sun Imperial Empire, yet someone actually dared to speak to him like this. His voice became menacing, and he said, "Immediately kneel down and beg me for forgiveness. If I'm satisfied, perhaps I'll spare your life." However, he gazed at the heavenly phoenix divine maiden, a look of intoxication on his face. "This woman, she's mine." He had seen many beautiful women before, but he had never seen a woman as beautiful and regal as the heavenly phoenix divine maiden. The 12 beauties had all been chosen extremely carefully. Not only were they beautiful, but they were also extremely talented in cultivation. However, compared to the heavenly phoenix divine maiden, the gulf between them was like night and day. Feng Po Yun and the others were all infuriated upon hearing this. Meanwhile, Jiang Yefeng and some others immediately spoke back in rebuke. This was their master's wife. Ling Han's expression also became cold, and he said, "You're seeking death. He knew that this young man definitely had an eternal river tier elite behind him. However, hadn't he killed Xie Donglai without hesitation? So, why would he be afraid now? Humph. You're pretty ballsy, aren't you? However, do you know who I am? Zhao Ku asked haughtily. He loved throwing that question at others. Generally speaking, people would all be scared **less when they learned of his identity, regardless of who they were. They would then become incredibly obedient and obsequious, afraid that they would accidentally offend him. My father is Zhao Zuyi. Zhao Zuyi was a legendary individual in the Great Crimson Sun Imperial Empire. According to legends, he had been a nameless disciple in some sect before. However, in a stroke of great fortune, he had entered a cave by accident, and discovered the lost ultimate techniques of the sect. He started to become stronger after this discovery, and he gradually made a name for himself. Afterward, he would always discover great opportunities just as he neared the end of his lifespan. In this way, he continued to become stronger, and he continued to advance to higher cultivation levels. Hundreds of millions of years ago, Zhao Zuyi had already been an old and seemingly near-death elder. However, hundreds of millions of years later, his condition and appearance were still exactly the same as before. Right now, he was already over 300 million years old. However, would he come across another great opportunity and advance to the Genesis tier when he neared the end of his lifespan? No one knew. However, because he had slowly ground his way to this position from a no-name weakling, Zhao Zuyi didn't exactly possess the demeanor of an elite. He had all the traits and bad habits of normal people. For example, he was lustful, and he also loved fame. He also had countless wives and mistresses, but for some reason, he only had a single child, Zhao Ku. In any case, he had named his son Zhao Ku in the hopes of avoiding misfortune. He didn't want the heavens to feel jealous and eliminate the only descendant of the Zhao clan. The members of the Earth Dragon sect all wore looks of arrogance and haughtiness. Their founding ancestor had been a guard for Zhao Zuyi's residence before, and although this wasn't any deep relationship, it was still a little something. Now that their sect was facing an existential crisis, they had naturally recalled their relationship with Zhao Zuyi. Thus, they had sent someone to ask for help. They coincidentally came across Zhao Ku along the way, and after gifting him a few beautiful women, Zhao Ku had agreed to come over and help. It wasn't that Zhao Ku was satisfied with their gifts, just that he had been cultivating for a long time and wanted to go out for a spin. Ling Han was completely unfazed. He had already obtained the secret technique, the Tide of the Ages, and become intertwined with the karma of some force in the celestial realm. So, why would he be afraid of an eternal river tier elite? He looked at Zhao Ku, and said, "If you really want to seek death, I'll grant you your wish." Descendants of elites like Zhao Ku would chase people like rabid dogs if they dared to disobey their will. This kind of dog couldn't be taught obedience. If Ling Han simply shooed him away, he would definitely use the power of his clan to seek revenge. Thus, since he would have to offend the Zhao clan anyway, he might as well offend them all the way and kill Zhao Ku right here and now. Anyhow, there were so many divine materials hanging on Zhao Ku's carriage, so it would be a shame if he didn't plunder it and make them his own. "How dare you?" Zhao Ku said with a cold sneer. Did this person really think that he was a profligate individual who could only borrow his father's name to frighten others? He was an elite at the medium extreme of the heavenly body tier. He was a genuine elite of the Great Crimson Sun Imperial Empire. Moreover, as the descendant of an eternal river tier elite, would he not have powerful treasures to protect himself? Ku literally means bitter or misery. Chapter 1349 Silver Dragon Armor. Chapter 1349 Silver Dragon Armor. Earth Armor Guards. Zhao Ku roared. Numerous chariots instantly flew down from the warship and formed a neat formation behind him. There were 12 armored warriors on each chariot, and their faces were all filled with killing intent. Auras of death and destruction radiated from their bodies. The cultivation of these warriors wasn't high, and they were only at the mountain river tier. However, with hundreds upon thousands of them standing together, the aura that they exuded was powerful enough to worry even sun-moon tier cultivators. Zhao Ku raised his hand, and roared, "Enter the formation. Kill the enemy." Shua. The warriors all leaped down from their chariots. They then started to sprint along the ground, crisscrossing through each other's paths in a complex pattern. It was as if the thousands of warriors had become a single entity. It was as if they had become a giant slithering snake. As they advanced, the armor that they were suited in also radiated with a glow that gradually intertwined. This glow fused their power together, elevating their power several hundredfold. This was an extremely peculiar formation. Ling Han could sense that the spiritual chi of heaven and earth was being ferociously absorbed by them, both from the sky and from the earth. This was the main reason behind their explosive increase in power. If it were an ordinary person, absorbing spiritual chi like this would definitely exceed the limits of their body and blow them up into pieces. However, through the connection of their formation, these warriors were able to evenly distribute the pressure that they faced. As a result, the amount of spiritual chi that they could absorb also increased by several hundredfold. Interesting, Ling Han thought to himself with a smile. It would be nice if he could teach this formation to the soldiers of the Great Ling Empire. That way, they would be able to elevate their overall battle prowess by quite a bit. Master, allow me to battle them, Ding Ping immediately said. He had already reached the pinnacle level of the mountain river tier, and thus his battle prowess was already extremely close to the sun-moon tier. Master, this disciple also wants to battle, Chen Ruijing and his 3 other disciples also said. They couldn't allow the youngest disciple to outdo them. Ling Han nodded with a smile, and said, "Go ahead." His 5 disciples charged toward the enemies. The previous 3 sects had all surrendered upon seeing Ling Han, so none of them had gotten the chance to battle against enemies. Now that the Earth Dragon sect was daring to resist, they were naturally itching to charge over and engage in battle. "Haha, 4th brother, you can stay back and guard the rear. Your elder brother is also itching to do battle," Feng Po Yun said with a hearty laugh. "4th brother, we'll leave the rear to you." Murong Qing was also hungry for some action. They were all from the lower realm, and if it hadn't been for Ling Han opening the sky, it was extremely likely that they would have all been refined into a realm pill by now. Thus, they naturally detested the 5 sects with every fiber of their being. They would feel distressed and pent up if they didn't pummel the 5 sects with their own 2 hands. After Feng Po Yun and Murong Qing both charged into battle, the heavenly phoenix divine maiden turned around to nod at Ling Han, signifying that she would stay back to guard the rear. All Ling Han needed to do was take care of Zhao Ku. After charging into the enemy formation, the figures of Feng Po Yun and the 6 others were quickly drowned out by enemy bodies. They appeared especially lonely and fragile among the enemy ranks. Although Feng Po Yun and Murong Qing hadn't reached the sun-moon tier yet, they had both advanced to the consummate level of the mountain river tier already. Thus, they definitely wouldn't be afraid of the enemy warriors. In fact, they could easily achieve victory even if they were to battle against 10 enemy warriors at once. However, the warriors had combined their battle prowess through a peculiar formation, which allowed them to possess battle prowess at the sun-moon tier. This was definitely beyond what Feng Po Yun and Murong Qing could handle. It wasn't long before they became bloody and wounded. Fortunately, there was Ding Ping to look after his 2 uncles and ensure their safety. However, this made Feng Po Yun and Murong Qing feel slightly agitated. Back in the lower realm, they had all been prodigies and elites, yet they were now being protected by their junior. This ignited their fighting spirit and sparked their will to fight beyond their limits. If they could maintain this rage and survive the battle, their strength would definitely grow significantly. Ling Han glanced over and immediately felt at ease. His eyes became as piercing as a sword as he turned his gaze to Zhao Ku. "What Zhao Ku, want, I get," Zhao Ku said with haughty confidence. "This woman will definitely become my plaything. However, there's no need for you to worry. I'll only toy with her for a few days. At most, I'll only toy with her for a few years. No woman in the world is worthy of staying with me forever. Anyhow, with this relationship between us, perhaps I'll even answer your begging for help if you end up needing my help in the future." He wore a mocking smile as he said this, and it was clear that he was trying to humiliate Ling Han. Ling Han used his fingers as a sword and immediately attacked Zhao Ku, saying, "Evil people die from speaking too much. Shua." The power of lightning transformed into an arc of divine lightning that struck at Zhao Ku. Who in the world could escape from the divine lightning of heavenly tribulation? Pa! A streak of bluish-white light flashed across Zhao Ku's chest before he even had the time to react. Shredded cloth instantly exploded into the air, and even Zhao Ku's protective origin power was unable to prevent the divine lightning from striking his body. However, as the pieces of shredded cloth cleared, they could all see that Zhao Ku was actually wearing a suit of silver armor beneath his clothing. This suit of armor was filled with divine patterns, which were all pulsating with a soft glow at this moment. This suit of silver armor had completely blocked Ling Han's burst of divine lightning. Zhao Ku looked down, and he couldn't help but laugh loudly, saying, "This is the silver dragon armor that my father bestowed upon me. It's forged from level 13 godly metal, so there's no way you'll be able to damage it unless your power can reach the eternal river tier. Moreover, my father infused a drop of the moon tortoise divine beast's blood essence into this godly metal. In other words, this armor possesses an incredibly powerful defense. If you can't damage my armor, you won't be able to eliminate the defensive power of my armor. If you can't eliminate the defensive power of my armor, you won't be able to hurt even a hair of mine. I'm already standing in a position of invincibility, so how are you going to battle against me?" Zhao Ku wasn't afraid to reveal the secrets of his silver dragon armor. This was because he was confident that no one below the rank of the Eternal River tier could defeat him. This is indeed a problem, Ling Han thought to himself. There was a deep frown on his face. The fact that Zhao Ku's armor was forged from level 13 godly metal wasn't overly important. Regardless of how sturdy it was the armor itself that was sturdy, not its wearer. Even if he couldn't shatter the armor, he could still deal a huge amount of damage to its wearer through the shock of a powerful strike. However, the problem was that this armor had been infused with a drop of the moon tortoise's blood essence. The addition of this blood essence had added an extra defensive barrier around the armor. In fact, there were two methods to breach this defensive barrier. The first was to shatter the defensive barrier, and the second was to shatter the silver dragon armor. However, both of these feats required that his power reach the Eternal River tier, yet Ling Han was only at the low extreme of the heavenly body tier. Sigh, why is it so hard to kill this person? Ha ha ha, are you feeling helpless now? Are you feeling despair now? Zhao Ku couldn't help but laugh heartily. He loved obliterating the willpower of his opponents. Seeing the looks of despair on their faces filled him with a sense of intense satisfaction. Ling Han smiled faintly, and said, "Perhaps the helpless person will soon be you." "Me?" Zhao Ku faltered for a moment before exploding into laughter. "Have you gone stupid? How is that possible? How is it not possible?" Ling Han charged over, yet his target wasn't Zhao Ku. Instead, it was the members of the Earth Dragon sect. He threw a strike, and a devastating power instantly hammered into the earth. Pa, 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 pa. Many members of the Earth Dragon sect were instantly smashed into pieces. Both their bodies and divine senses were obliterated. Zhao Ku was infuriated by this. He naturally couldn't care less about the lives of the people. However, Ling Han actually dared to disregard his presence. "You dare to ignore me?" Zhao Ku roared in anger before opening his mouth to spit out a miniature sword. This sword gradually grew in size, eventually transforming into a 3 feet long azure sword. He gripped this sword in his hand and made a slashing motion at Ling Han. Sword light instantly surged out, forming into a giant black snake that widened its jaws and bit at Ling Han. Chapter 1350 Scared Sh**. Chapter 1350 Scared Sh**. Ling Han turned around to reply with a punch. Peng! Divine light exploded into the surroundings as his fist struck the head of the giant black snake and shattered it into pieces. "You can't stop me." Ling Han continued to slaughter the disciples of the Earth Dragon sect. This had been his aim for coming here anyway, so he naturally couldn't give up simply due to the arrival of Zhao Ku. "Hurry, run. Activate the sect-protecting formation and bring out the ancestral weapon." The disciples of the Earth Dragon sect were all astounded. They hadn't imagined that Ling Han would actually be so wanton. Zhao Ku had made his intentions clear already, Yet he still dared to attack them so recklessly. Just how arrogant was he? Fortunately, both their sect-protecting formation and ancestral weapon were already charged up and ready to go. It was only because Ling Han had caught them by surprise that they hadn't activated these so far. Wang. The entire marshland lit up as the large sect-protecting formation started to circulate. Meanwhile, a colossal earth dragon materialized in the sky as the ancestral weapon was activated. This earth dragon had neither eyes nor a nose nor ears, and it looked incredibly repulsive. Ling Han was completely unfazed. Peng, peng, peng. With just 3 punches, the sect-protecting formation was blasted into pieces. Along with it, the earth dragon was also smashed into smithereens. He was already at the late stage of the medium extreme of the heavenly body tier, so how could these sun-moon tier formations and weapons withstand his power? He was unstoppable as he advanced, and the earth dragon sect started to suffer more and more casualties. This time, Ling Han finally revealed the ruthless side of himself. He had already given the earth dragon sect a chance. Since they didn't take it, they naturally had to suffer the consequences. Die. Divine light flashed through the air as Ling Han mercilessly threw his fists again and again. He had unleashed a battle prowess that was invincible among his cultivation level, so how could the mere earth dragon sect withstand his rage? They were like defenseless puppets as they were killed one after another. Damn it! Damn it! Zhao Ku continued to pursue Ling Han, yet his speed wasn't fast enough for him to catch up. His efforts were futile, no matter how hard he tried. He was seething with rage, and he felt as if he were being toyed around with by Ling Han. No one had ever dared to toy around with him like this before. He continued to toss all kinds of god tools into the air. These had naturally been given to him by his father. However, in his hands, these god tools could only unleash a destructive power at the early stage of the high extreme of the heavenly body tier, regardless of how powerful they actually were. This was far from enough to threaten Ling Han's freakish physique. At most, they could only cause him some minor wounds. In any case, Ling Han's grasp of the indestructible Heaven's Scroll had already soared to a new height. Thus, he could easily heal these minor wounds in an instant. In fact, this still wasn't the full limit of his capabilities. After all, he had only unlocked the 5th level of the Black Tower not long ago. When he fully comprehended the true essence of the indestructible Heaven's Scroll defense, his physique and defense would undergo another transformation and elevate to a new height. Zhao Ku had a powerful armor and defensive barrier, so Ling Han wasn't able to wound him. Similarly, Zhao Ku couldn't wound Ling Han no matter how many god tools he had. All he could do was pursue him in vain. His expression would become a shade darker each time Ling Han killed a disciple of the Earth Dragon sect. This wasn't out of compassion, but rather out of shame and humiliation. His opponent was blatantly humiliating him. "You're dead meat." Zhao Ku came to a difficult decision in his mind, and he retrieved a decree from his storage ring. This decree had been created by his father, who had used the fusion of his martial intent and blood essence to write it. Upon being unfurled, this decree would unleash the power of an eternal river tier elite. This power was formidable enough to kill Ling Han 100 times over. However, creating such a decree was extremely taxing, even for eternal river tier elites. Thus, even someone like Zhao Ku only had a single such decree on him. Right now, all he wanted to do was kill Ling Han. Wang. A brilliant light instantly exploded into the surroundings as the decree was unfurled. The martial intent of an eternal river tier elite fluctuated through the air, forming a devastating power that was capable of suppressing all beings. Go. Ling Han flicked his hands and tossed the notionless saint out. Brat, I was trying to cultivate. The notionless saint had been cultivating under the reincarnation tree when he was suddenly tossed out. Thus, he was naturally extremely annoyed. However, he couldn't help but laugh upon seeing the decree in Zhao Ku's hand. Die. Zhao Ku roared. The decree lit up again as a person walked out from within it. This person was like a god, and he possessed a domineering aura that made him seem like the ruler of the world. This was a projection that had been formed by the martial intent of Zhao Zuyi. Although its battle prowess couldn't compare to the real Zhao Zuyi's, it still possessed at least 1/10,000th of his power. In any case, This was still power at the Eternal River tier, and thus it was still capable of obliterating any heavenly body tier elite. The projection swatted its palm at Ling Han and the Notionless Saint. Humph. The Notionless Saint humphed coldly, and his Genesis tier aura instantly surged into the surroundings, suppressing the aura of Zhao Zuyi's projection. A mere Eternal River tier cultivator like you dares to stand up against me? The Notionless Saint made a grabbing motion at the projection. Pa. Zhao Zuyi's projection was instantly destroyed, unable to put up even a shred of resistance. Fuck. Zhao Ku's eyes widened in shock. His face was a picture of disbelief. This decree had been his biggest trump card, and it was something that could have killed any heavenly body tier elite. Theoretically speaking, there were only a dozen or so Eternal River tier elites in the Great Crimson Sun Imperial Empire. In other words, he was the most powerful person apart from these 12 or so elites. Thus, he could kill anyone that he wanted to kill. He had merely come to the Earth Dragon sect to mess around out of boredom, yet he had actually come across such a terrifying being. This person had obliterated the decree created by his father with a casual grab of his hand. Just how powerful was he? Zhao Ku started to tremble in fright. Who told him to unleash a decree? The Notionless Saint had lost his Genesis tier power long ago, yet he hadn't lost his grasp of the regulations. Coincidentally, decrees didn't contain power, but rather the martial intent of the Creator. This was also a form and comprehension of the regulations of heaven and earth. Zhao Ku had tried to use the martial intent of an Eternal River tier elite to attack a Genesis tier Saint. Wasn't he this seeking death? If Zhao Ku charged over right now and launched a punch at the Notionless Saint, the weakness of this saint would instantly be revealed. However, Zhao Ku was already going weak at the knees, so how would he dare to attack? He was at the heavenly body tier, so he could naturally sense the majestic aura that was radiating from the Notionless Saint. This aura was far richer and far more profound than his father's aura. This was an ultimate elite. Zhao Ku knew that he had picked a fight with the wrong person. This was someone who was even more powerful than his father. How the fuck could he have predicted this? A tiny force like the Earth Dragon sect had actually offended someone with such a terrifying background. Zhao Ku felt that he had been screwed over by the Earth Dragon sect. His name was indeed a reflection of his current situation, fucking miserable. Ling Han noticed the shift in Zhao Ku's expression, and he said, Zhao Ku, I'm not a bloodthirsty person, either. How about this? Leave your warship, chariots, god tools, and whatnot behind, and I'll spare your life. This was called getting things for free. Zhao Ku was overjoyed. He could still get out of this alive. I'll give them to you. I'll give them all to you, he hurriedly said. This warship was his father's, and he had spent a lot of time and effort to construct it. The chariots were also incredibly valuable. However, what did this matter? Were these as important as his life? However, Zhao Ku still glanced over at the Notionless Saint. This was the true ultimate elite, and Ling Han's offer would only count if he also agreed. The Notionless Saint wore a profound expression, and he calmly said, Is there a need to ask me about such trivial matters? What good acting. Zhao Ku hurriedly tossed all of his god tools onto the ground. However, he still wasn't willing to take off his silver dragon armor. This was his final life-saving god tool. Ling Han pondered for a moment before deciding against pushing Zhao Ku too far. Otherwise, if he believed that he would die and counterattacked in despair, the Notionless Saint was merely all talk and no substance. You can leave now, Ling Han said with a wave of his hand. Chapter 1351 Highest Jade Essence Here. Chapter 1351 Highest Jade Essence Here. Zhao Ku didn't dare to make a peep as he hurriedly left with his 12 beauties and warriors. As for whether or not he hated Ling Han and wanted to take revenge for this, only he himself would know. The remaining members of the Earth Dragon sect all felt pure despair. Even Zhao Ku had fled with his tail between his legs. To say nothing of the terrifying Ling Han, even if he patted his hands and left, would Zhao Ku forgive them for this? You've inflicted this fate upon yourselves. Ling Han was merciless as he massacred them. Feng Po Yun, Ding Ping, and the others all joined in on the massacre of the Earth Dragon sect. However, They weren't depraved and bloodthirsty people, after all, so they stopped after killing everyone who was culpable. As for the remaining people, they crippled their cultivation before letting them go. They were free to live out the remainder of their short lives. Ling Han and the others all felt solemn after this massacre. None of them felt the joy or delight of exacting revenge. However, the 5 sects had finally been relegated to the annals of history. They had finally cut this ribbon of fate, and there would be no more lingering thoughts of the 5 sects in the future. Ling Han collected his spoils of battle. However, the warship was far too large, and even he couldn't wrap his divine sense around its entire body and bring it into the Black Tower. Moreover, its huge size meant that it couldn't be landed in most places. In other words, this warship could only stay in the air and continue to consume exorbitant amounts of true origin stones. Ling Han wasn't profligate enough to waste his resources on such a luxurious yet useless warship. He started a huge demolition job, ripping all kinds of valuable items off the gigantic warship. For example, he took godly metal and true origin stones. The godly metal was obviously for his divine demon sword to consume, while the true origin stones were essentially money. He also collected all kinds of other materials. He could sell these in the future. After ripping off the final formation, the gigantic warship naturally lost its ability to fly. It crashed down from the sky. However, Ling Han had already flown the warship to an uninhabited place deep in the marshlands before his huge demolition job. Thus, the warship naturally wouldn't cause too much damage when it eventually crashed down. However, the huge impact of the crash still triggered an earthquake that affected some of the surrounding areas. Fortunately, this was the immortal realm, where the foundation of the land was incredibly stable. Otherwise, the destruction caused by the crash would have definitely been 10,000 times more severe. Ling Han came out of this battle with a rich supply of loot. Although he had plundered Jiao Ku, he had essentially been plundering the wealth of an eternal river tier. Thus, his yield was naturally astonishingly bountiful. After devouring the large amount of godly metal that he had obtained, the quality of Ling Han's divine demon sword successfully advanced to level 9. Moreover, after the shrinkage from before, it was now gradually starting to grow back in size. Although it still hadn't returned to its original size yet, it had already reached a length of around 2 feet. Ling Han was extremely satisfied with this. They left the Earth Dragon sect and headed toward the nearest city. Ling Han still needed to sell the huge amounts of materials that he had ripped out from the gigantic warship. This would earn him a huge sum of money. Perhaps he would even be able to purchase enough level 9 godly metal to raise the quality of his divine demon sword to level 10. If that were to happen, the divine demon sword's cultivation level would surpass Ling Han's. They arrived at Gathering Wind City. This was a huge city, and there were even heavenly body tier elites overlooking it. Cultivation and business were both booming in this city. Since they wanted to sell things, they naturally had to look for the gold origin auction house. Ling Han handed this task to his disciples. There was no need for him to personally attend to everything. After a few hours, his 5 disciples returned. They had already handed the materials to the auction house. Moreover, they also brought with them some unexpected news. The gold origin auction house was going to hold a large auction soon, and one of the items would be the highest jade essence heart. Highest jade essence heart. This was what Old Man Shu had asked Ling Han to search for. The old man hadn't told him why, but he had asked Ling Han to obtain it at all costs and bring it back to him if he were to ever come across it. Ling Han had never forgotten this request. In fact, he had even asked his 3 brothers and 5 disciples to keep this request in mind. Who would have thought that they would come across the highest jade essence heart here? Master, what's the use of this thing? Ding Ping asked. Ling Han shrugged, and replied, I don't know, either. His 5 disciples all felt confused. Why was their master looking for this item if he didn't know its uses? Ling Han laughed, and said, I'm sure we'll find out about its uses if we ask around. These 5 disciples. Geez, since they know that there's a highest jade essence heart for sale, why didn't they ask about its uses? If Ding Ping and the others could read Ling Han's thoughts, they would definitely feel extremely hard done by. They thought that Ling Han already knew about its uses. After all, It was his instruction for them to keep an eye out for it. After they learned of its auction, they had hurriedly run back to tell him about it. Ling Han wandered around to gather some information about the highest jade essence heart. In the end, he learned that this item had two uses. First, it could be used to suppress and dissolve fire poison. Second, it could be used to save one's life. This was a godly medicine that was nurtured by heaven and earth, so it was even more effective than many other divine pills. However, this also meant that the highest jade essence heart was incredibly valuable. As such, it would naturally attract attention and bids from many people. After all, life-saving treasures were the most valuable things. Moreover, with this item in hand, one could also increase their chances of finding treasures in ancient sites that were covered in intense flames. Ling Han couldn't help but sigh. He was always faced with the same problem. He didn't have enough money. Although he could make a huge sum of money from the materials that he had handed the auction house, who knew whether this would be enough to win the bid for the highest jade essence heart? In any case, he still wanted to purchase some more godly metal. How can I make more money? Master, there's a tournament ground in this city, and one can place bets there. For each battle that you win, you can double the value of your bet. If you win 10 battles in a row, you can receive 1,000 times the value of your bet. However, if you lose even a single battle, you won't make a single cent at all, Jiang Yefeng said. Oh! Ling Han's eyes instantly lit up, and he asked, is it fair? If one won 9 battles in a row, yet the tournament ground owner dispatched a cultivator 1 major tier above to them in the 10th battle, how could one ever achieve 10 victories in a row? Participants will only come across opponents at the same cultivation level, Jiang Yefeng replied. However, Master, you can't participate in this tournament ground. Why not? Because there's a rule stating that only those below the heavenly body tier can participate, Jiang Yefeng said with a chuckle. Ling Han was speechless. However, the existence of such a rule made a lot of sense. Although this city was overlooked by heavenly body tier elites, this also signified that heavenly body tier elites were the strongest beings in this place. They were like the kings of this city, so how could they stoop as low as participating in a tourney? Go, everyone participate in the tournament ground to win me some money. Ling Han could only pin his hopes on the others. Ding Ping patted his chest, and said, leave it to me. I definitely won't disappoint you, Master. No, leave it to me, Chen Ruijing hurriedly said. Ling Han's disciples scrambled to help him solve his money problem. Feng Po Yun walked over, and said, haha, fourth brother, Mu Rongqing and I also want to give this tournament a go. Ling Han pondered for a moment before saying, among us, Ding Ping has the greatest chance of winning 10 battles in a row. After all, he's already reached the middle stage of the pinnacle level of the mountain river tier. He should be invincible among cultivators at the same cultivation level. Everyone nodded in agreement. People would only come across opponents at the same cultivation level in battle, though the definition of same cultivation level encapsulated everyone from the early stage to the consummate level. In other words, there could be a power difference of 3 or even 4 stars. To most cultivators, reaching 4 stars was already the limit. Thus, someone at the early stage of a tier would definitely be at a huge disadvantage if they were to come across someone at the consummate level of the tier. That being the case, it was natural that people would only participate in the tournament ground battles when they reached the consummate level of their tier. This way, they could at least guarantee that they wouldn't be at a disadvantage in terms of cultivation level. However, how many people in the world could reach the pinnacle level? Extremely few. Those who could reach the pinnacle level were genuine king tiers. Then we'll let Ding Ping battle first. He can win us 1,000 times our bet. Ling Han came to a decision, and he handed all of his true origin stones to Ding Ping. Ding Ping patted his chest, and said, Master, leave it to me. Chapter 1352 Earning Money Through Bloody Battles. Chapter 1352 Earning Money Through Bloody Battles. Because they had handed all their wealth over to Ding Ping, all of them mobilized and came to the tournament grounds to watch the battles. This was a very hot-blooded place, and the people seated in the spectators' stands were all loudly cheering, whereas in the sandpit down below, there was presently a man fiercely battling with a huge wild boar. The cultivation level of both fighters was not high, as they were both in the spiritual ocean tier, but the situation was still extremely cruel and bloody. The wild boar's stomach had been split open, and blood, and even intestines, was spilling out, whereas the man had lost his left arm, blood spraying madly from his wound. But both the eyes of the man and boar were bloodshot with the violence and battle. Unless one side collapsed, the battle would definitely not stop. Wasn't it said that the demonic beasts and humans here are equals? Ding Ping asked curiously. Being equals is only limited to those demonic beasts that can take on human form. Jiang Yefeng helped to clear the doubts of his youngest junior brother. In the eyes of immortals, mortals and mortal beasts are all ants, so how could they possibly care? Everyone felt rueful. They had all come from a small world, and ascended to this level step by step from a mortal body. They definitely would not be able to see mortals as mere ants. Finally, it was still that human who was stronger, and stabbed the wild boar to death. However, he, too, had paid a massive price, as his stomach was also torn open by the fangs of the wild boar. Much of his internal organs had spilled out from the serious wound. However, cultivators had strong vitality, so as long as he managed to rest in time, he could still recover. In the case of the missing limb, though, it was definitely impossible to regrow the lost limb unless he gained a natural treasure or managed to advance into the immortal level. Ding Ping went down to register himself to take part in the battles, but because he was betting too many true origin stones, the tournament authorities did not immediately agree. Instead, they first evaluated his abilities. However, the pinnacle level was not obvious to the eye, so they could only tell that Ding Ping was in the consummate level of the mountain river tier. Thus, after slight consideration, the tournament authorities accepted Ding Ping's wager. However, his battle would only begin after a while later. There were really too many people battling here. Their first aim was profit, and the second was fame. Profit was understandable. If one won 10 times consequently, they would be able to use a small capital to earn huge profit. In terms of fame, members of great clans would frequently watch the battles here. If one managed to attract their eyes and join a powerful clan, they would naturally have boundless prospects. There was a total of 3 great clans in the Gathering Wind City, and they were the Lin, Li, and Sima clan. They all had a Grand Elder at the consummate level of the heavenly body tier backing them. They were like stabilizing forces for the city, and had been reigning over Gathering Wind City for more than 100 million years. It was said that one would rather become a dog of the 3 great clans than become the leader of a small clan, which showed how much power was held in the hands of the 3 great clans. The tournament grounds was jointly built and established by the 3 great clans, and thus, no one had ever dared to cause trouble here. They all adhered to the rules of the 3 great clans. In the southern part of the tournament grounds, a spectator's grandstand was abruptly erected like it was a lofty throne. That was a spectator's stand that was reserved especially for the 3 great clans. Outsiders would not even have the right to go up to that stand. There was once a sun-moon tier cultivator who was so outrageously bold that he dared to climb up that stand to take a look. In the end, he was apprehended by the 3 great clans and had his flesh cut off at the city gates while he was still alive. He only died of pure pain after more than 100 years had passed. In Gathering Wind City, the 3 great clans were true immortals that could not be defied. One after another, bloody battles endlessly continued, and practically each battle would leave the victor alive and the loser dead, which was incredibly cruel. Slightly less than half a day later, it was finally Ding Ping's turn. His first opponent was a middle-aged man at the consummate level of the mountain river tier. It was unknown whether he was in the early stage, middle stage, or other stages. This man had cold, merciless eyes. His upper body was bare and covered with multiple scars. This meant that he had experienced who knew how many deadly, tough battles in the tournament grounds, and to be able to survive successfully after so many battles, this man's battle prowess was definitely not to be underestimated. Please. Ding Ping raised his clasped hands. Sure, he had just raised his hands when he saw a dark light flash past. The middle-aged man had already started his attack. His feet stepped on the ground, and he jumped high into the air. The long saber he was holding in his hand was raised, and a sharp light was released. It was extremely blinding, and one would involuntarily close his eyes at its brightness. And it was in that one instant that his saber would also descend and directly hack his opponent to death. Ding Ping's eyes were irritated, and true enough, he leant his head to one side to prevent his eyes from being wounded. Boom, the long saber waved downwards. This was the strike of one at the peak stage of the consummate level of the mountain river tier, so it was very frightening. Just when it looked like the saber's blade was about to slash onto Ding Ping's neck, the middle-aged man involuntarily revealed a cold smirk. With them being so close, there was definitely no one that would be able to dodge this slash of his. It was really lucky. The opponent he encountered today was really too weak. He was employed by the tournament authorities, and had to battle once every 10 days. Whether he won or lose, he would be rewarded. Of course, the reward for winning far exceeded the reward for a defeat. Precisely at this moment, Ding Ping was seen stretching out his hand and gripping onto the long saber. By force, he had stopped the course of the saber. What? The middle-aged man was so overcome with shock that his eyes were almost popping out. He had used his full strength in this slash, so how could it possibly be caught with a single hand? Even if you used origin power as defense, you should have had all your fingers severed as well, and the might of the saber would not cease, but would continue to slice off your head. Ding Ping smiled softly, and the middle-aged man was sent flying out with a casual shake of his hand. Bang! He crashed heavily into the wall of the tournament grounds. This wall was forged from a special rock of the immortal realm, and added with a formation, it could be claimed that no one below the heavenly body tier could damage it. Thus, with this crash, a bloody mist sprayed out from all over the middle-aged man's body, and he directly lost consciousness. At first, it was a complete dead silence, but what followed soon after was thunderous applause. Innumerable people were screaming shrilly, and some women were throwing coy looks at Ding Ping. There were even some extremely bold women who even took off their undergarments and threw them down into the tournament grounds. If Ding Ping picked up someone's undergarment, he would be able to spend a night of enjoyment with the owner. The old ginseng couldn't help but be envious. There were so many undergarments there. He felt like he could no longer control his hands. A powerful force was surging madly within him, and he almost turned into an evil wolf that was howling up at the skies. Yee, this brat is quite strong. On the spectators' grandstand for the three great clans, a young man whose skin was blue all over revealed an expression of surprise. His name was Sima Lin, and he was from the Sima clan. This clan was not made of pure humans, so their skin was blue in color, and in the Sima clan, the bluer your skin was, the purer your bloodline was it meant. This Sima Lin was a well-known figure of the younger generation of the Sima clan. Indeed. The person next to him was also a young man, and his looks were handsome to the point of being bewitching. If he dressed in feminine attire, there would definitely be no one who would suspect that he was actually a man. And his actions were indeed very feminine. He used 2 fingers to gently hold onto his wine cup, his little finger protruding. His brows and lips were thin, exhibiting feminine charm. Hualan Tuor may not be considered an elite, but he has been in the tournament ring for 39 years, and has experienced no less than 1,000 battles, so he is incredibly experienced. Though he has also lost before, he has never lost so badly. This youth is truly worth nurturing. This man was a leading figure in the younger generation of the Lin clan. His name was Lin Xian, and he had a gentle and reserved demeanor. He had also been known as a poisonous snake. Sitting together with the two of them was a beautiful woman. She was a noble daughter of the Li clan, and her name was Li Ruotong. "Our Li clan will take him," she said calmly, but her tone was incredibly determined. Chapter 1353, Jiuyao. Chapter 1353 Jiuyao. The tournament authorities soon sent out other elites to challenge Ding Ping. Yet Ding Ping was one who had cultivated to the pinnacle level, and he himself had extraordinary natural talent. If it was a mere competition of pure power on the same cultivation level, even Linghan had to admit that he was no match for him. Furthermore, how many had actually cultivated to the pinnacle level in the whole world? Consecutive battles followed by consecutive victories. Very soon, Ding Ping had obtained a grand total of 8 victories. This did not only cause the spectators to go crazy, but the descendants of the three great clans in the VIP seats also bore serious expressions. What? This brat actually made a bet of 1 million true origin stones? Sichu Lin was astonished. If Ding Ping battled 10 times and won all his battles, this wager of 1 million true origin stones would become its tenfold an astonishingly massive amount of 1 billion. Even if the three great clans had powerful backgrounds, they would still suffer serious injury just to accumulate this billion true origin stones. This guy was too ruthless, he actually dared make such a huge wager. We must stop him, Lin Xian said menacingly, his tone soft. Li Ruotong did not speak, though unusual light flashed in her eyes. No one knew what she was currently thinking about. Let Zhou go, Sichu Lin said decisively. Immediately, someone approached, and said, however, his appearance fee. It was one of Sichu Lin's attendants. Humph, so what if his appearance fee is a bit high? Could it exceed 1 billion? Sichu Lin waved him off, and said, go quickly. Yes, young master. The person obeyed the command and left. However, the person that fought with Ding Ping in the 9th battle was not Zhou, but rather another person. His abilities were considerably impressive, though he unfortunately had not cultivated to pinnacle level, so how could he possibly be a match for Ding Ping? He was easily defeated in a few moves. Champion. 10-round champion. I want to give birth to your babies. On the spectators' stands, everyone seemed to have gone crazy. Even though it had only been a consecutive 10 victories, it was rare for one such person to appear once in 100,000 years. It was mostly because they would encounter the challenges of stronger and stronger opponents. Furthermore, there was not much time allocated for rest after every battle, so 10 consecutive wins had become an unattainable achievement. Looking at how Ding Ping won each battle so easily, perhaps he would have the chance to complete 10 consecutive wins, so this was naturally enough to make everyone go crazy. In the 10th battle, let us invite one of the greatest champions in the history of our tournament. Zhu Yarrow, to come on stage, the commentator called out loudly, his voice booming and resounding throughout the whole tournament ground. What? It is actually Lord Zhou, the only champion that has won 10 consecutive rounds in these 700,000 years. Gasp. Zhou, a champion who had won 10 consecutive battles 700,000 years ago, and also the only 10-round champion in the last 200,000 years. He was also known as the greatest fighter in the Mountain River tier. Hearing this name, everyone trembled, but they immediately began screaming and cheering shrilly, cheering excitedly for the hero in their hearts. With such a commotion, even Ding Ping revealed a sliver of seriousness, and began to anticipate this last opponent. Very quickly, a figure appeared in the passage entrance. It was an average-looking youth, his skin a bit overly white. He was extraordinarily thin, just as if he was malnourished. A black-colored aura seeped out of his body, a bit like fire, but also seeming like light. Upon a closer look, his whole body seemed to be light itself, and one could actually see through him. He was indescribably strange-looking. However, as long as one looked into his eyes, probably anyone would feel a coldness from the depth of their hearts. What a bloodthirsty gaze. This youth seemed to have grown up among wild beasts, and had survived through killing and bloodshed. There was no other feeling that could be seen in his gaze aside from a longing for his opponent's blood. Ang! The youth roared at Ding Ping, he raised his right hand, and a divine pattern on his wrist could be seen to glow. It actually formed into a giant wolf that was 9 meters tall. Its whole body was covered with silver fur, appearing to be extremely formidable. The giant wolf leaped out, and charged to attack Ding Ping. It was moving extremely fast, like a ray of light. In an instant, it had charged right up to Ding Ping, and opened its mouth to bite at his throat. Ding Ping clenched his fist, and punched out at the head of the massive wolf. Pang! The fist descended, and a frightening power wave spread out. The head of the massive wolf was instantly blasted apart, and its body was also sent flying with the force. With a bang, it landed on the ground and rolled over a dozen times. But the strange thing was that the giant wolf stood back up. A new head rapidly grew out of its severed neck, and it seemed to be completely unscathed. Yi! Even Ling Han was slightly curious. What was going on with this wolf? Joyao pulled up the clothing on his wrist slightly, and another divine pattern shone. As light surged, a giant blood-colored bear appeared. It was 15 meters tall and had astonishing size. The wolf and bear both roared repeatedly. Then they rapidly ran, and began their attack on Ding Ping. Joyao once again pulled up his clothing. One after another, divine patterns lit up. One after another, giant demonic beasts appeared. There was a total of 4 divine patterns on his left arm, while there were 5 on his right arm. In total, he released 9 demonic beasts. No wonder he was called Joyao. So it seemed that he could form 9 demonic beasts. Was this an ability he was born with? Otherwise, could it be that his name of Joyao was invented just recently? The 9 demonic beasts appeared together. Every one of them was an existence on the peak stage of the consummate level of the mountain river tier. The 9 of them joined forces, so it was practically equivalent to the early stage of the pinnacle level. Was this a bloodline ability? Ling Han was getting more and more intrigued. No wonder this person could become a king of the tournament. In a battle of equal cultivation levels, how many could hold up to the combined attacks of 10 people? However, Ding Ping was not at the peak stage of the consummate level, but rather at the middle stage of the pinnacle level. Even if Joyao was a 6-star genius, the combination of beast and man would only increase 1 star of battle prowess, which was equivalent to 7 stars, so how could he match the battle prowess of 8 stars? Come and fight me, Ding Ping shouted loudly, stepping out and charging towards Joyao. Peng! 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 The 9 demonic beasts greeted his charge, but were all sent flying with a single punch each from Ding Ping, showing his completely overwhelming power. The 9 demonic beasts were not even qualified to stop Ding Ping in his tracks. He had already arrived in front of Joyao, and punched out directly. Shua, the punch shot out, and directly blasted a hole in Joyao's chest. Ling Han's eyes lit up involuntarily. That was because though this punch seemed to have punched right through Joyao, Ding Ping had not actually hit anything solid in truth. Joyao's body actually turned into mist, and did not receive the impact. Joyao took the chance to counterattack. He formed his hands into claws, and clawed out at Ding Ping's throat. Ding Ping had not foreseen that his opponent would be so strange. However, his abilities were stronger, after all. Thus, he stamped on the ground with his right foot, and forcibly ricocheted his body backwards. Shua, Joyao's attack missed, but the 9 demonic beasts rushed over, and began a fierce series of attacks at Ding Ping. Interesting. On the grandstands, the eyes of Sichu Lin and his companions were shining. I had not thought that Joyao would have this move. How could that young man possess such frightening power? Could it be that he is cultivated to the pinnacle level? The trio discussed, all of them extremely stunned. Joyao could turn himself into mist, and this move was indeed very astonishing. However, Ding Ping was suspected to have cultivated to the pinnacle level, which was even more frightening. There were only a numbered few that could reach this point in the whole Great Crimson Sun Imperial Empire. At this moment, they all felt moved to treasure his talent, and wished to take Ding Ping as their subordinate. Chapter 1354, Joyao takes a master. Chapter 1354, Joyao takes a master. Ding Ping and Joyao were locked in an intense battle. Ding Ping was at an obvious advantage in terms of cultivation level. It was equivalent to having left the range of the mountain river tier, but he had not yet reached the peak stage of the pinnacle level, and so could not possibly advance to the sun-moon tier. He was thus in between the 2 cultivation levels. However, though Joyao was inferior in cultivation level, he himself was definitely a 6-star genius, and there was only a gap of 2 stars between him and Ding Ping. However, he still had the aid of 9 demonic beasts, which were sufficient to close in the gap of a single star, and added with the fact that these demonic beasts were all immortal, he was naturally even harder to deal with. Additionally, Joyao himself could also turn into mist, and could not be harmed with brute force, which made his battle prowess appear even stronger and more bizarre. However, turning himself into mist was obviously a very big burden on him as well. Not too long later, his complexion had become even paler, but the bloodthirst in his eyes had become even stronger. This was a natural talent, just like how Ding Ping could exhibit strength that surpassed his cultivation level. However, it could not be used indefinitely. In comparison, Zhu Yao seemed to be even more frightening, as not only could he turn his body into mist, he could also summon shadows of demonic beasts to battle for him. Boom! 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 The two fought furiously. Ding Ping had practically gone into a battle frenzy, and used his unique ability as well. With this, even Zhou Yao would not be able to endure. His ability of turning into mist was not omnipotent. When power had reached a certain extent, his ability of turning into mist would not be able to completely dispel the force. As the punch landed, the aftermath spread out, causing his whole body to be completely chaotic. Though he could still recover, he was still throwing up blood continuously. Ling Han nodded. If it was an ability that allowed him to be unharmed by any kind of force, this ability would be a bit too freakish, wouldn't it? From a certain aspect, the heavens were just. There would definitely not be a technique that could not be dispelled. Ding Ping showed his might, and as punch after punch landed, Zhou Yao continuously stepped back, throwing up copious amounts of blood. In the end, he could only choose to admit defeat. You have cultivated to the pinnacle level? Zhou Yao stared at Ding Ping. There was no dejected expression on his face from having lost a battle, and he appeared extremely calm. Even that bloodthirst in his expression had lessened considerably. That's right. Ding Ping nodded, and then added, if our cultivation levels were the same, I would not have the confidence to win our fight. I would. Zhou Yao exclaimed decisively. Ding Ping's expression involuntarily darkened. You are a little too immodest, aren't you? He did not act reserved, either, and said, the unfortunate fact is that you could not possibly advance into the pinnacle level, and in future, you will always be one cultivation level lower than I. In a battle of equals, you will definitely lose. Zhou Yao became silent. After a while, he asked, how did you cultivate to the pinnacle level? Was this guy an idiot? Ding Ping was astonished. How many people in the immortal realm had actually cultivated to the pinnacle level? The number was most probably even smaller than the number of eternal river tears. Thus, this naturally was a great secret. You and I had just fought a battle. Was it really appropriate for you to ask a question like this outright? But Ding Ping soon understood. Though this Zhu Yao's killing intent was sky high, he himself was like a blank piece of paper, and had completely no understanding of the ways of the world. Thus, he would naturally ask whatever he thought of asking, and would make no attempt to disguise his intentions. He thought for a moment, and then said, my master has given me considerable guidance, and added with the fact that I myself am no idiot, I finally broke open the door to the pinnacle level. Zhou Yao raised his head and asked, who is your master? His eyes were bright as if he had found his life goal in that moment. There. Ding Ping pointed in the direction of Ling Han. Zhu Yao looked over, and after staring at Ling Han for a while, his whole head of hair suddenly stood on ends. His whole body was covered in goosebumps as if he had encountered a dangerous wild beast. He involuntarily put on this kind of defensive posture. This person is very strong, he said. My master will definitely be the strongest elite in the world one day, Ding Ping said with complete confidence. Cough. At this moment, someone gave a cough and interrupted the conversation between them. It was the commentator of the tournament. In this battle, Ding Ping has won. Let us cheer for our new champion. This is the second champion that has emerged in these 70,000 years. Yet Ding Ping was completely indifferent. This was only one of the cities of the Great Crimson Sun Imperial Empire. How many such places existed in the whole immortal realm? His goal was the entire universe. Where is my winning stakes? He urged. This was his master's command. Please wait a while. Because the amount is huge, it cannot be gathered in a short amount of time. The commentator wiped away his cold sweat. That was 1 billion true origin stones. It was really too shocking an amount. However, would this brat dare to walk out of this city again in future? Bringing such an astronomical amount of funds with him, who would not be tempted? Even if this brat was invincible in the tournament, and had done something that had never been accomplished in these 70,000 years, he was only in the mountain river tier, after all. Any random sun-moon tier would be able to overwhelm him easily, What more when this gathering wind city possessed heavenly body tier elite? Then quickly send it over. After Ding Ping tossed out such words, he stepped out of the tournament grounds. Ling Han and the others also returned to the inn. Ding Ping had not received the winning stakes yet, so it was naturally meaningless for them to continue to join the tournament grounds and battle. Furthermore, they were also embarrassingly short of money at present. They only had those few true origin stones, now used for cultivation and to pay for the rental fees for their rooms. If they only gambled a few true origin stones, even if they won 1,000-fold of their stake, how much would that be? Yee! Ling Han's senses were very sharp, and he couldn't help but smile. What is it? Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden asked. We will have a guest later. True enough, they had not sat down for a very long time in the inn when they saw a person come and pay them a visit. The terrifying aura that he was exuding instantly scared a great number of customers in the inn witless, and they almost fainted in fear. Jiuyao, I want to take you as my master. Jiuyao got right to the point. He was so blunt as if he had no idea to speak in a roundabout manner. Ling Han involuntarily smiled, and asked, Why should I take you as disciple? Jiuyao was stunned for a while, then seriously thought over the matter, and replied, I can kill for you. This. Ling Han was speechless in spite of himself. This youth's killing intent was too heavy. However, Jiuyao was indeed a promising talent. Even if he was inferior to Ding Ping by 2 stars, he could match him. His future achievements would definitely not be inferior to Ding Ping's. Furthermore, though Jiuyao was a little bloodthirsty, he was a completely blank piece of paper in terms of personality. He could still be slowly taught so that he would not be willfully killing the innocent. If you want to take me as master, the first thing that you have to adhere to is not to easily commit murder, Ling Han said solemnly. Jiuyao thought for a moment, and then nodded. He directly knelt and bowed 3 times. Your disciple, Jiuyao, greets you, master. That was a little too fast, wasn't it? I only said that if you want to take me as master, I haven't even agreed yet. Ling Han sighed. This disciple might be a little too inflexible. However, this was also a rare merit. There were already very, very few people who were so honest and frank in this world. All right, from today onwards, you will be my 6th disciple. Congratulations, master. Congratulations, 6th junior brother. Chen Ruijing and the others all congratulated. Jiuyao looked at Chen Ruijing and the others, and couldn't help but shake his head. He asked, Why are you all so weak? His face was filled with curiosity. They were obviously his senior brothers, but why were they not strong enough? The expressions of Chen Ruijing and the others darkened involuntarily. How could this little junior brother of theirs speak so bluntly? I say, 6th junior brother, any one of us can easily suppress you with a single finger, and you still dare call us weak? Jiang Yefeng teased, smiling. He himself was also a prodigy, so he was naturally displeased. In a battle of equals, even if you all attacked together, you would not be a match for me, Jiuyao said calmly, without the slightest bit of smugness, as if he was just stating a common, ordinary fact. Damn him. Chen Ruijing and the others were all gritting their teeth. They felt that there was a need to teach this little junior brother of theirs what showing respect to his senior brothers meant. Chapter 1355 Who would be doing the kidnapping? Chapter 1355 Who would be doing the kidnapping? Ling Han did not mind the minor squabbles among his disciples. He knew that Chen Ruijing and the others would definitely act appropriately. Knock, knock, knock. Not too long later, a knock sounded on the door. A waiter pushed open the doors and walked in, his expression filled with respect. Guests, the young miss of the Li clan would like to see all of you. In Gathering Wind City, the Li, Lin, and Sichu clan were all the first-rate aristocrats, and in the hearts of all citizens, they were supreme gods. Now that the young miss of the Li clan wanted to see Ling Han and his group, it naturally caused him to feel suffocated. Yet Ling Han merely smiled, and answered, Oh, we have a guest. Then just invite her over. The waiter instantly paled in shock, and exclaimed, Sir, that is the young miss of the Li clan. I know, you mentioned it, Ling Han said, smiling. The The waiter's face was filled with astonishment. Could it be that this person had gallbladder of the true dragon? He actually dared to ask the young miss to come and see him. He paused for a moment, and then said, "Sir, you might not know, but the Li clan is one of the most powerful great clans of this city, and the ancestor of the Li clan is one of the numbered few elites of this world. He is practically invincible. His worldview was limited, after all." In the eyes of this waiter, the ancestors of the three great clans were probably the strongest people in the world aside from the Crimson Flame Emperor. Ling Han involuntarily laughed. He would not argue with someone who was less knowledgeable. "You can just say it as it is. I trust that the young miss of the Li clan would not make things difficult for you," he said with a smile. The waiter was helpless. He could only turn around and left. After a while, footsteps were heard once more. The waiter led the way in, and a graceful beauty followed behind him. She was exuberant with heroic spirit, and had a strong confidence in herself. It was the young miss of the Li clan, Li Ruotong. "You may leave," Li Ruotong said to the waiter, as natural as if she was the true owner of this place. "Yes," the waiter answered respectfully. Li Ruotong turned around to look at Ling Han, and asked, "Are you the leader of these people?" Ling Han smiled, and said, "Some of them are my disciples, and some are my brothers." "What is it? Is this any business of yours?" Li Ruotong looked at Ding Ping, and said, "Our Li clan wants to take this young man in." "He is my disciple," Ling Han said. "If he goes to our Li clan, he will definitely have better prospects and development in future," Li Ruotong emphasized. "Oh, are you so confident in yourself?" Ling Han asked smilingly. "He has cultivated to the pinnacle level. In the whole immortal realm, he is extremely extraordinary, and you will not be able to teach him." Li Ruotong argued strongly. "I am not able to teach him, and your Li clan will be able to." Ling Han did not get angry. Li Ruotong revealed an expression of pride. "The ancestor of our Li clan is a being in the consummate level of the heavenly body tier. His experience is evident. Furthermore, our Li clan has abundant resources, and this is something that you are completely unable to supply." Ling Han couldn't help but laugh loudly, and said, "Now that we're on this subject, have you all prepared the 1,000,000,000 true origin stones that you owe?" Li Ruotong's imposing manner instantly declined. She had forgotten that this was also their CR. No, the CR was Ding Ping, and not this person. Her beautiful eyes blinked, and she said, "Do you mind if I speak a few words with your disciple alone, sir?" "As long as the brat agrees, I will not mind, of course," Ling Han said. Li Ruotong was filled with confidence. With her charms and eloquence, how could it be that she would not be able to convince Ding Ping? She tugged on Ding Ping, and walked out the doors. Chen Ruijing hurriedly approached and asked Ling Han, "Master, this woman is obviously here to kidnap him. How could you so easily allow fifth junior brother to leave with her?" "That's right. She is obviously a man-eating tiger, and fifth junior brother is young and rash. He is just a young man who has never experienced the tests of the affairs of the heart." "Sigh, Master, you are now really going to lose both your disciple and money," Jiang Yefeng said. The atmosphere among the master and disciples had always been so harmonious. Ling Han would not put on any airs as their master, and the four disciples would also do as they willed. However, this did not mean that they respected Ling Han any less. "That's right. Fifth junior brother as well as the wager of 1,000,000,000, if this woman manages to kidnap fifth junior brother into the Li clan, wouldn't this 1,000,000,000 true origin stones then become a betrothal gift?" Kang Shuyuan smacked his thigh as if he had just realized the fact. "This woman, she's so devious." The four disciples all came to the same conclusion. They all are really blind. Why do they all not take notice of Grandpa Ginseng? The old Ginseng was both defiant and displeased. He was so nutritious. Just by spraying a little essence, it would be able to extend someone's life, and grant a mad boost to their cultivation level. Why was he so disliked? He could not understand even after much thinking, and could only take this as fact that these women all had really poor eyes. "Grandpa Ginseng, let's go and screw someone over." Jiang Qiaoling ran over, and she grabbed the old Ginseng's beard with one hand, whereas her other hand was dragging Rabbit. Presently, this trio was in their element. Two troublemakers together with someone fearless who loved getting in trouble were making trouble in Gathering Wind City every single day. Ling Han smiled and said, "That may not be the case. Who knows, you all may get a junior sister-in-law." Jiang Yefeng had no confidence, and said, "If I had known, I should have taught fifth junior brother a few tricks. With the secret techniques of courting women of my Jiang clan, I guarantee any woman and girl would immediately fall easily for his charms." "Is that right, Yefeng?" Chen Di asked gently from behind him. Jiang Yefeng knew that he had had a slip of the tongue, and quickly winked at his three senior brothers, hoping that they could speak up on his behalf. But who would really interfere in this kind of matter? Chen Ruijing and the others only acted like they had seen nothing. "Are you really sure?" Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden asked Ling Han. "Hey, don't look at how that brat, Ding Ping, looks so honest and innocent. In truth, he is extremely crafty, and can really put on a deception of being weak and devour a stronger opponent." Ling Han smiled, shaking his head. "That little girl from the Li clan is destined to lose both wealth and herself." However, Ding Ping did not return that night. He did not return on the second day, and even on the third day, he was not back, either. This caused Chen Ruijing and the others to shake their heads repeatedly, saying that their master had miscalculated. Now, their fifth junior brother must have fallen into the trap of love in the Li clan, and could no longer remove himself. Fortunately, even though their fifth junior brother was going to take his wife's name and become a son-in-law of the Li clan, they had added a sixth junior brother to their number. One left and one joined, so there was no loss. But by the fourth day, Ding Ping brought Li Ruotong with him and returned. Looking at the way the two were walking, it was absolutely evident that the two of them were now a couple. Subconsciously, their fingers would touch and their shoulders would come into contact, showing clearly the sweet feelings between them. Looking at this scene, even Jiang Yefeng was dumbstruck. This fifth junior brother was too awesome, wasn't he? In a short 3 days' time, he had dealt with the prized daughter of the Li clan. What a saint of love. Ding Ping did not just bring a beautiful wife back, he also brought as many as 1 billion true origin stones back as well. As it turned out, he had been socializing, with the accompaniment of Li Ruotong, among the 3 great clans, and finally managed to gather the 1 billion true origin stones in the last 3 days. Thus, after obtaining this astronomical wealth, he immediately brought Li Ruotong back with him. Such a huge sum was really a headache. Putting aside those minor characters, it was even possible that members of the 3 great clans would be tempted. Pang! Right at this moment, a huge sound was heard. Going by Ling Han's experience, he judged that someone must have damaged the door and walls. "Ding Ping, come out," someone called out loudly. The group went out, and saw that the main doors and wall of the inn had indeed disappeared. There was a blue-skinned young man standing at the entrance, and anger was exuding from all over his body. It affected the space, and caused even the air to warp. Situ Lin. Basically, when someone says they have eaten the gallbladder of a fierce animal, they have gotten abnormal courage from what they consumed. You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.